family
good morning.
member. Yes. So everybody also knows that, as you can remember, when we get excited and when a family member gets lost, the look, what do? I need to see y'all. I taught you on Thursday. What do? We lean in. We come looking for our lost family members, right? Lean in. I need y'all lean in. Lean in. There you go. That's my family. That's my family. Yes. Again, thank you all so much for being with us for day 2. We have an amazing day in store for you all. We have our amazing executive director, Representative Tara Simmons. Glad to see you, my sister, our family member. We have our elected officials in the house today. Some amazing folks who are friends of ours. They're not friends. They're family members of ours. So with that being said, we have an amazing day. We're going to practice telling our stories, and then we're going to do a breakout session talking to our elected officials. We're going to go over all the details. And so I'm excited for a powerful, impacted, vocal, just a day of just being amazing. Storytelling is our truth, but it also creates social justice change through storytelling. So that's what we're going to be focusing on today and getting that across. So with no further ado, I'm going to turn it over to our very own Representative Tara Simmons. Thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you, sister. It is so wonderful to see all of you today. Oh my gosh, this is what keeps me going, is being in community with other impacted people and allies who are working on the issues to change our circumstances. And I don't think I know everybody here, so I'll just go ahead and share a little bit about why I'm here. I am the director of the Civil Survival Project in my full-time job, but also just my heart will always be with civil survival. I also now am a legislator, just recently elected, which is great because now we've been able to grow our team, bring on Kelly to lead the organizing and advocacy efforts for civil survival. And a lot of times the bills that civil survival is working on, I'm the prime sponsor in the legislature. So it's been really great. I grew up with a lot of the same adversities that a lot of us who've been in the criminal legal system have gone through, poverty and trauma, and was a mom at 14, got pregnant. And, because of where I came from, with every single person in my family being incarcerated and struggling with substance use disorder, I did too. But when I went to prison, finally, I had gone through foster care and juvenile system and jail, and finally found myself in prison. I decided I wanted to figure out how to change this, because it was either go back to selling drugs to support my family because I couldn't find a job or a place to live, or it was go to law school and try to figure out how to change the system. And so I went to law school really with a mission towards, removing barriers for people that have been incarcerated, and have been doing that since. Didn't know that I would not be able to sit for the bar exam initially, and had to fight to the state Supreme Court. And of course, our community came together and supported me, and I won, so I could become a lawyer. Just 2 days ago, we had the first case since my bar fight of another formerly incarcerated person who the bar had denied. And it was argued in the state Supreme Court 2 days ago. So we're waiting on pins and needles. That person had a sex offense from when they were 19 years old, 14 years ago. And it really weighs on me how even within our community, there's different hierarchies of, what is acceptable or forgivable or redeemable and what's not. There's a lot to think about, especially for some of us who've been harmed with sexual violence. But one thing I do know is that everybody has the capacity to change, and that we should be, really thinking about opportunities for everyone. And so oftentimes in our movement, people with sex offenses have the least amount of opportunity and forgiveness. And for this gentleman, he was 19 and he sent some photos to an underage person, and he gets that label, and they won't let him take the bar. So anyway, I just am going on that to say our work, we still have so much work to do. so much work to do. And every time we win, right, it's a movement, and it's momentum towards another win. And that's why it's so important that we have community. So, now today at Civil Survival, we have our amazing organizers and policy manager on here today. We also have legal services now. Charlie's here today. I'm so excited. Charlie's a new member of our team. He's a brilliant lawyer who's been fighting for our people for many years, and just joined our team a few months ago, and is representing individuals on record expungement, vacating, and legal financial obligations, and things, sex offender registry relief, and things like that. So I'm glad he's here today too. In my other role, as a legislator, it's been really wild. I was the first person who's been formally incarcerated that was elected to the state legislature. And just as with my bar fight, my vision and goal is to not be, I might be a first and only at times, but I really want to open the door for other people to be in, with lived experiences like ours, to be in all of these positions. I don't like being a person only in the legislature. It's very lonely, and it's very difficult because everything is, from the language we use there, it's really hard, and I have to educate my colleagues, but it's definitely, I think, going to really result in us moving the work that we want to see go forward a lot easier, because I'm in those caucus rooms talking to my colleagues and explaining why people harm or commit crime. It's they were harmed, and the more we can get to prevention and like giving people their needs, getting their needs met up front, hopefully, our movement goes away, because there is no formerly incarcerated people. There is, or currently incarcerated people, right? There's a healthy community. So anyway, I really enjoy that so far. It's been difficult because of COVID, and we've been doing it all on Zoom, but I'm glad you'll get to meet a couple of my colleagues later this afternoon who I work with all the time. I would definitely be here all day if I could, but I have an event already scheduled for many months at 11:30 with healthcare workers. I was a nurse at one point in my life too. And now in the legislature, I sit on the healthcare committee and the public safety committee and the civil rights and judiciary committee. And I was the only freshman put on the rules committee, which is kind of cool. We decide what bills get to come to the floor for a vote, for a full vote and debate. But healthcare is important to me. I think that the more we can increase access to healthcare and make it affordable for everyone, and mental health and substance use disorder treatment will prevent a lot of people from going to jail and prison and being traumatized in this criminal injustice system that isn't restorative. So anyway, I'm grateful to be here this morning. And if anyone wants to ask a question or anything, I can do that for a couple of minutes. I just wanted to be with all of you and let you know I appreciate you, and you make a difference. And we need all of your voices in this movement because it takes a lot of work, and more hands makes less work, right? Is that how it goes? But anyway, we need your stories too, because not everybody has the same story. So we need all of you to get involved. And we're here to help teach you how to get involved and hope that you will.
Does anyone have any questions for Representative Simmons?
Yes, Ms. Simmons, I have a question for you. The definition of, I don't know if you know, I know you're an attorney, right?
An attorney? Yes.
So I have a question, like on the defense law, self-defense law. Why isn't it more protective of the people defending themselves instead of, like, I had a history and I defended myself against a gentleman and they incarcerated me because they needed that guy to put me away, right? And it was my house and everything. I just want to know what's up with that law that it's so they could protect the person that's defending themselves in his house to not get in trouble. It's like they didn't listen to me, what I'm saying. did I go overboard? I don't know. He walked on sacred ground, and I defended myself. So I ended up going to prison for 5.5
I'm sorry, I'm gonna interrupt
years.
really quick.
And this gentleman had, he had a felony warrants out for his arrest, but he had a disease called Huntington's. And he used that on his side, sort of the prosecutor.
Family member Julian,
My question is
your internet is a
how
little
we
bit
broaden
choppy.
that self-defense thing for people like, yeah, go ahead. Okay.
So family member Julian, your internet was a little bit choppy, so Representative Simmons may not have gotten everything that you were saying. So
Yeah.
Representative Simmons, if you were able to catch some of that, you can go ahead and respond. But if you need more in depth, then maybe Julian can put that in the chat, and then we can follow up at another time,
Yeah.
or if whatever you can get.
Yeah, it was hard to hear you, Julian. But what I would say, I think your question is about being a criminal defense in your criminal defense case, and you wanted to invoke self-defense as an excuse to the crime, right? And that maybe your public defender or your criminal defense lawyer wasn't successful in that. And I, definitely would need to see like the law that he was invoking, and was it your public defender didn't do a good job, or is there an actual statutory change that needs to happen? We would have to do a little more investigation in that. It could have been a mixture of both, or it could have been one or the other. Because there is ways that you can use self-defense as, to prevent a conviction. And so I don't know if it's your public defender didn't do a good enough job, or the jury didn't believe them, or what have you. So that's probably something we could talk about later.
Okay.
Thank you, Representative Simmons. And Julian, you have our contact information. You can definitely contact our RLAP info line, and then they can connect with Representative Simmons and move forward with that for you, okay?
Thank you.
Thank you. You're very welcome, family member. I think we have time just for one more question. Make it less than 2 minutes if you can.
I got a question.
Yes.
Ban the box.
Uh-huh.
Right? Is that what that has to do with asking you if you have a criminal history?
Yes.
Does that apply across the state?
Yes.
Okay, because the reason I say this is I recently applied for a job at a college, and in the application it asked me if I had been convicted and recently released within the last 10 years.
Yeah, and so I did not know that was happening at the college, and at Olympic College, right?
Yeah.
We can look into that, because there is some exceptions to the law if you are going to have like unsupervised access to vulnerable adults or children, and things like that. So I don't know if because they have they have a child care center at Olympic College, if that's a way that they're able to ask. But the law is, you're not allowed to ask on an application except for in some very narrow circumstances. But then they can still ask at an interview, and they can still do a background check. And so they can still deny you. And so we absolutely need to keep doing more reform.
Yeah.
That happened in 2017, I believe, or 2018 when we got that bill passed. But we need to continue to do more reform. But I'll look into the Olympic College thing or community college. I'll check with Olympic College, because right now there's a reentry navigator position that I got funded through the legislature for our community in Kitsap County. And I want to make sure that a good person gets in that position. And I know that the administration is all for hiring somebody with lived experience, but that barrier is there, and it does deter people or cause, some, again, othering, right? And additional layers of trauma for us as we're trying to reintegrate, to feel like we're othered or we have to disclose on an application. It's not good. And I'll look into that and find out, is there a legal reason they have to put that there because maybe the childcare center or something like that.
Yeah, it's possible. And that's the job I applied for, one of them.
Yeah, and CMS, yes, I am putting a bill for the session to ease the conviction vacation process by bringing uniformity to the misdemeanor and felony statutes. So we'll have to connect with you on that. I know Kelly will be managing all of that for civil survival and have a lot of information soon. So it's in development right now. So
Okay, thank you.
yeah,
Thank
and the
you.
inequity of resources between prosecution and defense. Christy, I see that. I am leading the development of the budget for the defenders and civil legal aid providers across the state for the Blake response at least. But yeah, there is inequity of resources. So.
Well, I know there's an equity of resources, but what can we do about that? Like obviously the prosecution can use the resources of the jail and the police department, but then the defense attorneys, they don't have any resources to do their own investigation unless you hire an attorney and spend your state, like how can that be legal in the state of Washington? These are state-run institutions when we're talking about, I mean, it just seems like it's a no-brainer, but I don't hear discussion about how to change that. I mean, you do probably, but I mean, what can we do to change that? And is there any laws, that we can help pass that make it equitable?
Yeah. All right, and Mark Thompson asked a question of his legislators. Can you trust that they heard you? No, because generally our LAs check our email, and because we can't manage all of our emails. So legislative assistant checks the emails and reads them, and then the member, depending upon their priorities, has given instruction to their legislative assistant to loop them into certain conversations. You can't trust that those web response forms that your legislators saw that. You can also call their offices, and the numbers are generally on the website too, and that might help you get in touch better. Also sending a personal email can help, just their name with a period between their first and last name at leg.wa.gov. That's another way, but your representatives there, Phil Fortunato and Eric Robertson, are definitely not aligned with our values. But Drew Stokesbury is a little bit better. So all right, well, I'm gonna get going. I have a thing, but you all are gonna have a wonderful day. You're in great hands with this team here. I am so happy that you all are together and getting this space to learn and grow and become more powerful in your advocacy. And I know that this is just the beginning. There's going to be lots of time to organize with our Game Changer leaders and with Kelly and her directly impacted caucus group as the session goes on. But it's wonderful to see your faces. Thank you for taking time to invest in yourselves and come to this training and in this movement. So thank you.
Thank you so much, Representative Simmons, for your time. We know that you're super busy. We love you. We support you.
Love you.
And I can truly say, and most of us that are even on this call, thank you for paving the way, because Washington has been the most progressive when it comes to criminal justice reform. So thank you for paving that way and setting the stage for all of us. And even with Civil Survival being one of the original founding members, and here we are, right? Here we are making that change, and we're able to do it with you and support you and creating a space for us all to even, be able to share the education that you have bestowed upon us. And I've been on this amazing journey with you. So I love you. Thank you so much. And for everyone else, if you have any questions, please, Corey put it in the chat. You can send it to info@civilsurvival.org. We have an amazing RLAP team. We'll talk more about that later. And so I will ask it ahead of time. We get a lot. We are a small, group, right? So we get a lot of requests. So please be patient with us, and we'll get responses to your answers. I just want to thank you that. Again, Representative Simmons, go do what you do. Represent us. We love you. You have our support, and have a good one.
Love you. Love you all. Take care. Bye.
You very much.
All right. That was good stuff. It's just like hearing the like Representative Simmons is, a human just like each and every one of us, and just was able to overcome the obstacles and barriers that were in her in that was set before her, right? But it's just, I'm just sitting here and I had to just take a moment to reflect. It's like, Representative Simmons is each and every one of us, or somebody that we know. And so it's encouraging to me, and being where I'm at today, to know that we are change, we are the difference. Our voices do matter. And how we show up in our communities and with our elected officials is very important. So, and we can do some amazing things, and we are. So I'm excited that you all are on this journey with us. As Kelly just said in the chat, we are the game changers. You're absolutely right. We are. I mean, we've taken this to what states? Florida, Atlanta, Denver with reentry, and folks, we hear all the time that folks are in other states are trying to figure out how to model the civil survival model. So we get a lot of that, partnerships and things like that. So again, you all, we can do this. We are doing it. It's showing. As long as we show up, no matter how many times you write a letter to your elected officials and you don't not getting a response, keep writing, keep writing, keep writing. Go looking for them. Show up at their doorstep, because they're not going to show up at yours. Keep looking for them. Yes, 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 yes. With that being said, I'm going to go ahead and turn it over. So we have our own civil survival RLAP program, and we have our own civil survival attorney, which is Charlie, who is on, and Charlie is going to speak more about what RLAP is and what they do and what you can expect. Charlie.
She gets everyone.
Michelle. Good morning, everyone. My name is Charlie Klein. I'm one of the attorneys with Civil Survival's RLAP program. So what I'm going to do is just sort of go through a PowerPoint presentation of covering some of the work and issues that we work on with RLAP, running through those issues, and then hopefully at the end of the presentation I'll have some time for some questions. Please do keep in mind, even though I am an attorney, I can't answer any specific legal questions you might have pertaining to your own individual cases. I am happy to answer general questions, but try to keep your questions more general, and we'll hopefully provide you with some good information. All right, so I'm just going to share my screen here, and we will go from there. All right, can everyone see the presentation? All right, so barriers to success. So one of the biggest issues we encounter with RLAP and with our community of folks that we're trying to serve are legal financial obligations. So legal financial obligations, or LFOs, these are all the fees, costs, and fines and restitution that are imposed as part of your sentence when you're convicted. These fines and fees end up creating having a disparate impact on people in poverty and communities of color. Most of these fines and fees are discretionary. However, there are mandatory fines that are absolutely required to be imposed in each case. Some of these mandatory fines include a $100 DNA collection fee and the $500 victim penalty assessment, which is used to fund victim services in the state of Washington. Those are both required on felony convictions, as well as restitution where actual injury or loss occurs. Okay, so like in the case of like a robbery conviction, if there's an actual victim and it's known what the loss was, then you may be required to repay restitution. There are other fines and fees associated with specific crimes, but these are some of the main ones. Unfortunately, there's Washington State does not have a uniform court system, which means all the counties sort of operate how they choose to operate. And so there's no uniformity in the amounts of LFOs imposed on how the counties and the courts consider a defendant's ability to pay, and how those LFOs are collected or enforced. Okay, so to give you an example, these figures are a bit dated, but they do give you an idea of how LFOs can vary. So in 2013, Washington State average for a felony conviction LFOs were $1,100. However, in King County, the average was just $600. In Pierce County was $935, and as you see in Kitsap County, it was much different. The average was $2,270. Now, I would guess that things have changed since then. I don't know if we have more recent figures yet. You know, this can change depending on who the elected county prosecutor is. It can change depending on county budgets. But the point is that the sums can vary widely. So these LFOs that are imposed up until the recent change in law, all of these LFOs, the fines and fees, as well as restitution, would accumulate interest at 12% per year. So what this means as a practical matter, you might enter prison, say in April of 2011 with $2,000 in LFOs, and leave prison in October of 2013 with $2,800 in LFOs. All right. And so once you were released from custody, you would be expected to begin repayment of those LFOs. If you were unable to make those payments after release, you could face garnishment of your wages, warrants for failure to comply with the financial terms of your sentence, and possible confinement, depending again on what the county's priorities were. Okay, so again, prior to the most recent change in law, there were sort of three relief options for folks who had imposed LFOs, right? So you could waive the non-restitution interest. So that would be interest on any fines or fees if the court agreed to your motion, okay? So you could ask the court, hey, I cannot pay all these fines. Can you please waive the interest? So that was one option. Additionally, the court had the option of reducing the interest on restitution, but that would have required the person making that request to have paid the principal, the original amount of restitution owed. And finally, for offenses committed prior to July 1st of 2000, those offenses actually had a jurisdictional time limit. So any felony conviction with associated LFOs that was prior to July 1st, 2000, the county had 10 years to collect those LFOs. And if prior to the expiration of those 10 years, the county filed for an extension of jurisdiction, they could get another 10 years. However, once that 20-year period was expired, then the county would no longer have the ability to enforce those LFOs anymore. And so this is still true today. If you have LFOs on a case that was prior to July 1st, 2000, you're likely eligible to waive the entirety of those LFOs because the counties would no longer have jurisdiction to enforce that amount. Okay, so in 2018, this is when the big change in the law occurred, okay, under House Bill 1783. So what that did is it eliminated any interest from non-restitution LFOs, okay, and that was retroactive. So if you have LFOs currently, if you have LFOs currently and they still have existing interest on them, other than the interest on restitution, that interest is automatically eligible to be waived and must be waived under law. Okay. Another change to the law was that it sort of took the rulings of a couple major court cases and put them into the actual law. And so it forced and required courts to actually consider a defendant's eligibility or ability to pay before imposing LFOs, okay? With the idea being that imposing LFOs on folks who have no ability to pay those LFOs does absolutely nothing. It cripples the folks with debt that they will never get out from under, and the counties and court systems cannot actually collect the money. So nobody wins in that scenario. Okay, and finally, one of the major changes was it stopped discretionary LFOs on folks who the court found to be indigent. Okay, so the court could no longer impose discretionary LFOs on folks deemed to be indigent, and that indigency standard is basically if the repayment of the LFOs would cause manifest hardship. Basically, if somebody would be unable to pay their living expenses and also pay their LFOs, then the LFOs, discretionary LFOs, had to be waived. Okay. Some of the other work that's being done on LFO reform, the Minority and Justice Commission has a grant from the Department of Justice. Through that grant, there's a group called the LFO Consortium that are working to guide future reforms, bring together stakeholders, and make sure that impacted communities have a voice at the table. There is impact litigation. One example of that was the case of Fuentes versus Benton County. That impact litigation is when a sort of class action or a case is brought to change a system-wide approach. So this case ended Benton County's practice of basically a modern-day debtor's prison, severe enforcement actions, and really unjust consequences for those who are unable to pay their LFOs. And of course, there is legislative change in the works, and as Representative Simmons touched upon, and as I'm sure you can learn more about at Kelly's legislative caucus, there's a House Bill 1412 that, if passed, would provide additional LFO relief for mandatory minimums and restitution. Okay, and that bill will be brought back this session. I do see a question in the chat: case-by-case discretionary determination of indigence or mathematical? It is a case-by-case determination of indigency. There is no mathematical formula. They do take into account several factors. The one objective standard is the federal poverty guidelines. Anybody below 125% of the federal poverty guidelines is considered indigent. Unfortunately, those federal poverty guidelines do not take into account regional differences in income or costs, and so they grossly underrepresent those who are actually in poverty. So one of the other areas that our team at RLAP can help in are certificates of restoration of opportunity, or CROPs. These were introduced into law in 2016. And what they essentially do is they allow some people to get a receipt, basically showing that their debt to society, or their debt in the eyes of the criminal legal system has been paid, and so that they can move forward. Okay, so these crops, more or less, their aim is to help folks with obtaining certain employment licenses, and with the hope of helping you to maybe obtain housing. Okay, so there are certain requirements. I'm sorry. There you go. There are certain requirements for obtaining a crop. One of the requirements are basically that you've been out of full or partial custody for a certain length of time. You've complied with all the terms of your sentences, that you have paid all your LFOs or are following your payment plan, and you haven't committed any new crimes. And finally, there are certain disqualifying offenses such as Class A felonies or sex offenses that will disqualify you from obtaining the crop. Like I said, a crop can assist you in obtaining some occupational licenses. However, there are exceptions to many employment fields such as law enforcement, the license to practice law, many licenses involving financial responsibility, and many licenses involving work with vulnerable people and populations, and within healthcare. Okay, and similarly, while a crop is designed to hopefully sort of give the person with the crop the ability to show this certificate to a potential landlord, say, hey, I've turned my life around, I've followed, I've complied with all my sentences requirements. The landlords are under no obligation to consider the crop or to excuse any sort of past criminal activity. So, crops are not a large part of what we do at Reentry Legal Services, but we are able to assist folks who are interested in obtaining one. A big part, along with LFOs, of the work we do are vacating and sealing of criminal records. So, oftentimes you will hear the terms vacate and expunge and seal sort of interchangeably. Depending upon the jurisdiction in the state, those three words can mean the same thing, or they can mean very different things. In Washington, they do mean different things. Usually when we talk about vacating, in Washington, what we're talking about is making it so that it's as if the conviction never occurred. Okay, so while the conviction would still appear on your record, what it would show is that you were not in fact convicted. It would just, the charge would still be on your record, but it would show that the charge had been vacated. So you could legally say that you had never been convicted of that crime. So if you were convicted of 2 felonies and you ended up getting both of them vacated, you could legally say that you had never been convicted of a felony. And likewise, the barriers that come with having been convicted of that felony would have been removed, with the exception of firearm restoration, which I'm happy to answer questions on in a little bit. So for vacating in Washington, there are 2 procedures. For vacating felonies, you have to have what's called a certificate of discharge. Now, this certificate basically represent or states that you've completed all your financial and non-financial terms of your sentence. Okay, sometimes courts will automatically provide these. Many times, folks are going to have to seek them out themselves. Okay, after you've paid off all your fines, after you've completed your sentence. But that's the first step in getting a certificate of discharge. Once you've got a certificate of discharge, your felony may be eligible for vacation. Okay, typically, crimes that are eligible or convictions that are eligible for vacation tend to be property or drug crime related, but this is not always the case. There are crimes against people that are eligible. However, many crimes against persons, violent crimes, are disqualified from vacation. Okay, so in order to be eligible to vacate a crime, vacate a conviction, not only do you have to have completed all the terms of your sentence, including your LFOs, but there's also a timeline for eligibility. So for Class C felonies, 5 years must have passed since the latter of your release of total confinement or release of community custody. Okay, so basically 5 years have to have passed since you got finished with prison or probation. And there's also a 5-year timeline that looks backwards. That says in the 5 years prior to requesting to vacate this crime, you cannot have been convicted of any new offenses. Okay, for Class B felonies, it's the same double timeline, but it's 10 years. So 10 years must have passed since the completion of your sentence. And within the past 10 years, you cannot have any further convictions. Okay. What has been good about legal reforms in this area is that the new HOPE Act, which passed just a couple of years ago, changed the law with regard to felony vacations. And basically, as soon as if your felonies are otherwise eligible on that timeline basis, if it's been 5 years, since the time of your sentence and 5 years without a criminal conviction. If you have not yet paid off your LFOs, as soon as you pay off your LFOs, your conviction will be eligible to vacate. Prior to this change in the law, that timeline wouldn't start until you had paid off everything. So you might pay off everything. You might finally pay off all your LFOs 15 years after your conviction, but your conviction wouldn't be eligible to vacate until 5 years after that point. And that was prior to the change in the law. The change in the law said, no, you can pay it off. And you've spent the requisite amount of time out in the community without any new offenses, you're eligible to vacate this conviction. For misdemeanors, there's also a timeline. It's 3 years in general, with some exceptions for different types of offenses. However, the law for the misdemeanors has yet to catch up to the law for felonies. And so as of right now, as of the law today, the timeline for eligibility for misdemeanors does not start until you complete all your the financial terms of your sentence. So, this is still a barrier for a lot of folks because they may have just paid off their misdemeanors, which tend to have lower LFOs associated with them. But those misdemeanors, that the clock for eligibility doesn't start to run until everything is paid off. And this can really hamper folks when maybe they have a small like driving infraction, often like driving while license suspended 3, which happens to be the most charged crime in Washington State, and frankly shouldn't be a crime. And hopefully changing the law can help in that regard. But say you would otherwise be eligible to vacate your felony conviction from 10 years ago, but 2 years ago you had a DWLS charge. Well, you were finally able to pay off that DWLS last year, but now you still have to wait 2 more years to even be eligible to vacate that conviction. So, there are still barriers that hopefully we can move legislation forward to make things easier for folks. We do also do work on pardons. These pardons are often necessary for crimes and convictions that would otherwise be ineligible for statutory vacating. Finally, as a result of the Washington State Supreme Court's decision in the Blake case, all possession convictions, all drug possession convictions are now eligible to be vacated because the statute that criminalized drug possession was found to be unconstitutional. Now, this is only with regard to drug possession cases. Any cases with regard to possession, such as like possession with intent to deliver, those cases are not eligible. Only simple drug possession. So, simple possession of cocaine or simple possession of a drug without a prescription, those things would be eligible to vacate. Same with simple possession of marijuana in district court. So that's some of the other work that we do. We do some work on driver's license reinstatement. This is obviously an issue for a lot of folks, and it's unfortunate. Folks get caught in a recurring cycle where they get their driver's license is suspended. They have a number of fines that are associated with that suspension. They need to work in order to pay the fines. They need to drive in order to get to work. They're then forced to drive on a suspended license. They pick up more license suspensions, more fines, and it just goes on and on, okay? As I said before, similar to the way in which there's no uniform court system in Washington, there's no uniform reinstatement program for driver's licenses. Okay, you can go to WashingtonLawHelp.org. There are a tremendous amount of resources there for self-help in figuring out how you might go about reinstating your license. You can get a copy of your driving record at the posted address there, DOL. That will give you some instructions on what it is specifically that's holding you back. There is proposed legislation in decriminalizing DWLS3, hopefully making it just a violation. There's some options that you may have as far as filing for bankruptcy and being able to discharge your debts and hopefully get your driver's license back. But again, that's something that we may also be able to help with at RLAP. Another thing to keep in mind, another barrier that we may be able to help with is child support payments, which are preventing folks from getting their driver's license back if they're behind on their child support payments. It's often something that will prevent you from reinstating your driver's license. You can get legal help in changing an order of support if you're unable to make those payments. And here are some resources here in the slides, and we'll provide these at the end of today's session. So you all will have those resources available. Okay. Again, the slides will also contain some resources for family law issues. These would include any divorce proceedings, any child care agreements that need to be reached. We have some resources there and some additional resources for LFOs and obtaining crops. Okay, so I'm going to end the presentation there, and let's see if I can figure this out here. Let's see.
Up towards the top of your screen, there should be a stop share.
Yeah, stop share. There we go. So I'm just giving away my my Zoom expertise. So I will. I'm happy to answer questions. Again, please do try to keep them more general. If you do have a more individualized question pertaining to a specific case, I'll try to give you the best general non-legal advice answer I can. And if we're able to talk later offline, then I'm happy to maybe provide you some more information. So opening it up to questions.
All right, I got one.
Yeah.
I got convicted of a crime due to public records request. I have proof they lied in my trial.
Mhm.
Do I have to take that to the appeals court? Is that the process?
Yeah, I mean, yeah. So if you're seeking to undo a conviction based on like new information, you know, that's either that's an appellate matter that you would want to challenge the actual conviction, right? You're not saying I'm ready to move on from the conviction. You're saying I shouldn't have ever been convicted. So yes, that's something you can file a personal restraint petition, or you can seek an actual reversal based on like new grounds. You know, you may want to contact either Northwest Justice Project or the Clear Line, so 211, and they may be able to provide you with resources for appellate attorneys. But yes, that's where you'd want to aim for that.
I have one more part to this question.
Yeah.
Is there the same prosecutor that used this false evidence to convict me of this crime also is a prosecutor for another one that I went to prison for? Is there any like conflict of interest? Like if I can prove he lied the first time, that he should not have been handling my second case?
I mean, if you know, you may be able to
prove he knew they were lying.
You may be able to raise that. I mean, that sounds like something that you know, should have been raised, you know, by your defense attorney. And so, you know, you may have a path towards arguing for ineffective assistance of counsel. You know, again, it's the same process. Ineffective assistance of counsel arguments are much harder to make than say, you know, I have new evidence that wasn't available at the time.
Okay.
All right, so I do have some hands up. Michelle, why don't you go ahead?
Video, now audio. So I'm advocating for an individual who pled guilty. Being not an attorney, I was always playing catch up stuff. So I was able to get all the evidence, all the picture evidence, and the telephonic warrant. And due to the fact that when you plead guilty, you only have 1 year from the date of pleading to withdraw that.
Mm-hmm.
But I did find a clause called collateral attack, I believe it's called.
Mm-hmm.
Does that go through the appellate, or do you look to, or just submit it to the portal for the court of conviction?
So for a collateral attack, you're basically appealing, saying,
Okay.
you know, on grounds that, you know, there's new evidence or there was an error, some substantial error. That is not work that I personally do, so I don't want to. I can't outline for you the specific process, because we don't do appellate work at RLAP. Again, I'd suggest contacting Northwest Justice Project and Clear, who can hopefully put you in contact with the statewide office of Public Defense, which handles appeals. So that's something you'd want to do.
All right, thank you.
Yeah, Seamus.
Thanks again for your time. This is great stuff. With regard to, I mean, when somebody's getting released and they're about to start on their journey of reentry, it seems like a number of these things are only applicable, especially if they're going to seek vacation years down the road. But their likelihood of success is going to be improved if they set themselves up for success and have a good understanding of reasonable expectations about what they should be doing in the next 5 to 10 X number of years is there any sort of clear, consistent direction in a reentry program for not just here's how to we recommend surviving day to day in the future, but in addition to that short-term reactive direction, adding and also welcome back to society, and here is the process that we would recommend you abide by in order to be able to vacate your crimes in the next decade?
Yeah, I mean, that's a good question, Seamus. Unfortunately, it's the short answer is no. I don't think there is no consistent resources available for folks who are about to be released and set out on their journey to sort of reintegrate themselves back into the rest of the world. It depends largely on the release counselors that are available at the certain facility. I would hope, and I think it's certainly something that we as a group at Civil Survival would like to push for, is better resources for the court systems themselves that they can provide to defendants as they are going through the court system, so that people actually do know what their sort of future options are, and not just looking at and not just sort of throwing away the key after folks are sentenced and just forgetting about them, but actually treating them like whole human beings, and providing resources for them to actually reintegrate. And there's also push to have things automatically vacated and when they become eligible, similar to how juvenile convictions, juvenile adjudications work in the state. There should not be an onus on folks to try to hunt down all the right materials that they're not going to have access to nearly as much as the court systems themselves. It shouldn't be on the individual to find all that just so they can get the relief that they're entitled to. So, those are our legislative changes that I know, Representative Simmons has in her sort of box of things that she wants to accomplish, and it's certainly there are things that we hope to work on at Civil Survival. But as of right now, that there are no consistent statewide resources, and it's really piecemeal.
And then follow up there, we've got it's not ubiquitous, but there's going to be a frequent layer that persons interact with upon reentry or before reentry, where they have a parole officer.
Mm-hmm.
And I would think that this would change the dynamic between the person with the record and the parole officer if the relationship was not just watching you, buddy. If it was additionally, I'm watching you for a slip up. However, my job is actually easier as a parole officer to facilitate your, reincorporation into society. And so to be of some sort of aid, I wouldn't think that it'd be much of a major addition to their responsibilities, et cetera, to include that. And that would not be a change in law. It might be a development, cultivation of the relationship between an organization like your own and the organizations of parole officers to say, please add this to your kit, add this to your arsenal. It might make your job easier as well as making your role more effective.
Yeah, no, that's a good idea. I mean, I know parole and probation departments they're hard nuts to crack. But I think the point you make is a good one as far as another layer of another avenue for relationship building. It's certainly something that we focus on at the prosecutorial level, trying to build those relationships, trying to foster a sense of what are we trying to accomplish with this supposed criminal legal system. What is the purpose behind it all? And I think the work we do at Civil Survival and the work that Representative Simmons is doing at the legislature is really focused on this idea that folks who go to jail and to prison are people. They're humans who make mistakes, and there is no reason, I think, financially, economically, socially, morally, why we should simply say you go there and you're done. It doesn't make sense as a society. And I agree with you. I think a probation or parole officer is a perfect entry point as far as making that change, and really saying, look, my responsibility is not to catch you slipping up. My responsibility is to help you, become part of your community again. So yeah, that's a point well taken, Seamus. And I think, something that we should certainly be looking at.
All right, thank you, Charlie. We're running a little bit behind. I don't know if everyone saw, but I put in the chat a way for you to sign up for our Game Changer groups. And next month on the second Wednesday at 7 p.m., Charlie will be at our Kitsap County Game Changer group, and he'll be there. We'll be there for about an hour and a half or so, and he'll just be there specifically to answer legal aid questions. And another thing that I wanted to uplift is that all of our Game Changer leaders will be getting access to what's called jabs, where we can look up people's criminal history if they ask us to, so that they have that available to then contact the clerks and file on your own to vacate your record or get LFO relief or what have you. So I wanted to uplift that and thank Charlie. Charlie, you have any last remarks? Final remarks?
I think the work you all are doing by participating in these Game Changer groups is essential work, as far as taking agency and being the change you want to see. And I think, it's a pleasure and a great opportunity I have here at Civil Survival, working with you all to, hopefully not just, get relief on an individual basis, but hopefully further your mission to make real system-wide change and make it so that this path forward just is open to more and more people. So thank you all for taking part in this, and thank you, Corey and Michelle and Christopher and Michelle and Kelly.
Thank
All right,
you,
thank
Charlie. And remember, you guys, if you have any questions and you want to get in contact with the RLAP team, that's info@civilsurvival.org. Remembering practice patience, because they do get a lot of inquiries, so they will get back to you. Okay, just want to highlight that we are a team of our word, so we keep our word amongst our family and friends and community. So just know we're coming, we leaning in, we see you, we coming. Thank you again, Charlie. Please enjoy the rest of your day and your time with your family. We appreciate you and all the work that you do to serve our communities. All right, now this time, hey, Mark. I love the background. At this time, I think it's like Corey said, we're a little bit behind. Is everybody good with moving on, and then we'll prepare for a break after this segment? Everybody good with that? Yes, my people, I love you all. We're gonna turn it over to Kelly and Chris, and they are gonna be talking about the model of organizing.
Thanks,
Hello,
Michelle.
everyone.
Go
Thank you,
ahead, Chris.
Michelle. Did you want to go ahead and lead it off, Kelly?
Yeah, so we're actually going to talk about telling our stories to our legislators. And I'm going to go over the document that we put in the chat, and I think Corey's got it up there again. And I did want to comment on one of my comments I made yesterday about getting emotional when I talked. And I do just want to make sure that everybody knows that it's okay. So when I said that I'm proud that I'm able to tell my story without crying, that's actually not completely true, because I still get emotional. And I actually think that that's kind of powerful too for the legislators to see the level of pain that this is causing us. So my real point was that I'm able to get through it without with people being able to understand my words, which was not true for a long time. And I'm going to share my screen. I'm going to, first of all, share a couple of quotes that are my favorite about our stories. So hold on just a second.
Real quick, Kelly, can I say something?
Yeah.
I just want to kind of attempt to engage with the audience, hoping that folks didn't fall asleep on us. I know it's, we start at 10 o'clock, and if folks just wanted to, maybe state something like I make a difference in the chat, or, say hello, just to know that, I'm able to feel folks' energy as we move into this next segment. So yeah, I'd appreciate it if, if you guys would just say something like I make a difference in the chat.
I make a difference.
Awesome. Or if you want to yell it out, I make a difference, or, hello, I'm here, I'm awake, I'm excited, I'm ready, right? The energy. Thank you, Mark, Mary. Thank you, everyone. Thank you, Corey. A little background to this is I'm so, the virtual stuff, I'm still, trying to get accustomed to it and engaging with folks. And I'm so used to just engaging with people's energy in person that I need this. So thank you very much. Thank you. Sorry, Kelly, go ahead.
No, thank you, Christopher. I totally agree. So thank you for pausing to do that. Do my screen really quick.
Absolutely.
Okay, so these are two of my favorite quotes from Brene Brown. She talks about owning our story and loving ourselves through that process is the bravest thing that we will ever do. And I think that that's really important about the work that we do. And one of her other quotes is, you either walk inside your story and own it, or you stand outside your story and hustle for your worthiness. So I just really love those quotes because it reminds me of how important our stories are. So there we go. So when we meet with our legislators, we don't always have a lot of time, which is one of the reasons why we wanted to talk to you a little bit more about telling your story. It can be a little bit intimidating sometimes, but what I have found is that they are just real people and they are really interested in our stories. And so it is important to practice telling your story. They don't have a lot of time. If you get an appointment with them, it's probably no more than 15 minutes. And that's if you get a direct appointment with them. And it could be less time than that. When we testify on bills, you're lucky if you get 2 minutes. So it's really important to think about your story and what are the main points of your story. So we kind of have outlined here that you want to introduce yourself, hello, representative, my name is, and I live in, and that's important. You can talk to any legislator, but the legislators do listen more closely to their constituents. And so a lot of times when, so we'll have a lobby day in February, and we will match people up with their districts. But you can reach out to other legislators, especially if they're on a committee that's running a bill that you want, to reach out to the chair of the committee and talk to them. But it's important to name your issue, state clearly and concisely what issue you want to discuss, how it affects you and your family, and what is the action you want your elected officials to do. And it can help to have some supporting facts about why they should listen to you and why they should take this position. So we have kind of an example on there I'd like to tell you about this barrier. And then how it's affected your reentry, how it's affected your family. Again, you can share your personal story or concrete examples about your experiences with this issue and why you care about it. And then it's important to make a very explicit ask of your legislators. So we're going to have those legislators come in today. What we're going to do right now is break into, well, actually what we're going to do before we break out into the rooms is that Christopher and I are going to model what this might look like. And again, keep in mind, especially with all the amount of people that we have here, you're only going to have maybe 3 to 5 minutes to make a pitch. And I think one of the things that can be really hard, especially for me when I first started doing this, is when you have a lot of trauma and your story is really complicated, you want to tell them every piece of your story because your story matters and it's important. And so I think this practice helps, coming to the game changer groups and just getting more practice telling your story is really important. So I'm going to stop sharing my screen. And there it is. First of all, I want to know if there is any questions about the story, telling our stories before Christopher and I model it. No? Okay. I think Christopher's going to make the ask, and I am going to be the legislator.
Yeah, so hello, Senator Olson. How are you doing today?
I'm doing great. Thank you for asking, Christopher.
Awesome. So I'm a constituent in your district. My name is Christopher Johnston, and I'm speaking to you today regarding House Bill 1413. And first of all, I just want to ask you, are you familiar with House Bill 13 or 1413?
Yeah, it's one of the juvenile bills.
Yeah, exactly. So it's the
points bill.
The bill regarding scoring of prior juvenile offenses in sentencing rank calculations. So essentially, what this bill would do it would exclude juvenile convictions from being considered in sentencing on a new conviction. I'm in support of this bill, as I was someone who was given actually an additional 11 months in a new case that I had caught based on juvenile conviction. And so I think this bill would help a lot of people who have had juvenile convictions in their past. And I would just like to ask you, is that a bill you're in support of?
Well, first of all, Christopher, I just want to thank you for sharing your story with me, and really admire you coming forward and being vulnerable and sharing your story. It is a bill that I've been watching, and I definitely appreciate hearing how it impacted you and realizing that we have a lot of change that needs to get done. So yes, you can count on my support for this bill, and thank you so much for coming forward and sharing.
Awesome. Thank you very much. I'm glad I voted for you.
Thank you.
Have a good day.
Okay. So now I think Corey is going to put us into some breakout rooms, and we will practice telling our stories in there.
All right, just give me one moment, folks.
Well, I can start talking because I'm guessing that Reps Johnson and Goodman are going to want to talk. You're going to want to talk a lot about the police reform legislation with them, as well as other things. I'm assuming with Tara Simmons, you already talked about our voting bill. And pretty exciting that this election next Tuesday might be the last one that some of you have to sit out, because next November you can vote. So that's probably the most exciting thing that's happened in the past couple of years. You know, and that's a lot with Tara Simmons. Senator Cooter and I had written that bill a few years ago, and you probably recall it got all turned into a ball of yarn in the Senate on the floor, which was horrifying to watch, but it killed the bill at that point in time. But At the same time, we knew that Tara Simmons was running for election, and when she got elected, both Senator Cooter and I knew that the universe was calling for her name to become the prime sponsor of that bill. So had her take it over a year ago, and with her magic woofle dust that surrounds her in her ability to show the world what someone who got into some trouble legally when she was younger, how they can totally change their life around and become not only a productive citizen, but an attorney and a member of the House of Representatives. So she did a great job in going and getting a Republican co-sponsor for the bill. And Jesse Young was her co-sponsor. And I would probably disagree with a whole bunch of things that Jesse Young believes in, but he was absolutely a hero with that bill, because he very much believes in second chances and that people turn their lives around. And so it was one of the more emotional things I've been involved in the going on 6 years that I've been in this job, is to get to watch that bill be passed. So that was a highlight of my legislative career, and having Tara there couldn't have been any better, and the timing was perfect. I had sponsored another bill that had to do, and actually the bill that I sponsored had to do with parents with former felony convictions being able to go volunteer in their children's classrooms. And that bill came from talking to your group, like 2 years ago, maybe 3 years ago. Time starts to all run together in my head. And so you were the impetus to write that bill. And that one, I'm going to back up a minute. Back in 1973, I was a first grade teacher, and I was a first grade teacher in a really low socioeconomic area. In fact, one of the lowest in the nation, and certainly one of the lowest in the state of Washington. So my little kids had, it was a school with 97% free lunch, not reduced lunch, but free lunch. So these were kids who had very little food in their house. They'd come into my classroom door, and I would have cold cereal that I could give to them just to put something in their tummies. And that was before we had school breakfast. It was before Head Start. It was before we had kindergarten in Spokane at that time. There was no kindergarten. So some of these little guys, I was the first professional person who had ever seen them. One little guy came into my classroom, and he was filthy dirty, and he had no words. He had no language. And he had a twin sister, and they were both these two little blonde kids, and the twin sister would interpret the world for him. So, and this little guy, I'll tell you this story. I might have told it to you before, but it's kind of a funny story. So this little guy, he was like Helen Keller, and I'm a brand new 21-year-old first grade teacher. And in my school, we had like the school psychologist, the audiologist, the OTs, the PTs, because we had extra space in the school for their office space. So I walked him down the hallway into that group of people and said, there's something really wrong with this little guy. And so we tested him, and we met with his mom the second day of school and said to her, the reason he has no language is he was born deaf. And he's 6 years old now. And he has been deaf since birth, and no intervention at all. And you all know early learning, brain development. He's missed key years in brain development by not being able to hear anything and not being able to communicate. Anyway, he was like Helen Keller, and he would vacillate between ending up in my lap whenever I read stories to the kids, and I wouldn't even know when he got there. He'd just sort of like sneak into my lap and snuggle up, or he'd be just pissed. Angry as all get out. And one day he was angry, and he went in the coat closet, and I went in a couple of minutes later to check on him, and he had written "fuck you" in huge red letters on the wall, and he spelled it F-U-K-U. And I looked at that and I thought, this is so great. We just need to work on silent C. And so I had him erase the "fuck you" off the wall, and we started working on luck and suck and buck and tuck. There's a lot of consonant U-C-K words that aren't the swear word. So anyway, it was kind of a funny story, but it sort of shows the level of lack of intervention and training little kids that come from that much poverty have. And so the parents of those kids, a lot of them had had former run-ins with the law. A lot of them had former felony convictions. I actually taught one day with 2 FBI agents in my room because this one guy had gotten out of prison and he was armed. He had escaped from prison and he was coming to kidnap the 6-year-old little blonde white girl that was his stepdaughter, because he wanted to kidnap her to get to his baby with her mother. And so, I mean, I had 2 FBI agents in my room. So that was my classroom in 1973. I loved having parents in my classroom volunteering, because parents should be in their kids' classrooms volunteering. That's good for kids, it's good for parents, it's good for the school. It never even occurred to me to ask the parents, and it was really before we did all the analysis, evaluations of people's history. We didn't do that at that point in time. And, you know, I was just happy to have the parents there. So here I'm running this bill after talking to all of you about getting parents in classrooms. And I was actually stunned at how hard that was with the other side of the aisle. And what happened is they put so many intensive scrutiny pieces into the bill that I thought, you know, I'm not going to move this bill forward, because actually there's a lot of schools out there that wouldn't think twice about keeping parents out of their kids' classrooms. And I don't want to put in some law that makes them do things they're not even thinking about doing right now. So Tara and I both agreed we're going to come back to that and see if we can do it better and right and get it through with less of the poisonous things that got added to it. So we'll try that one again because it's important. But I know there's a lot of classrooms out there, like mine was in 1973, that just welcome parents in to volunteer with their kids. And I don't want to screw that up by passing some legislation, trying to make it better for the people that right now think parents shouldn't be in there. So we'll keep working on that.
That was a great story. Thank you, Representative Dolan.
Yeah. Anyway, I'm happy to answer questions for you guys. And I see Rep. Goodman's here.
Yeah, Rep. Goodman just came in the room. I'm gonna, we did miss our break. So if somebody needs to take a bio break or whatever, feel free to just turn your camera off and do that. But we're gonna go ahead and continue on. And with that, I'll pass it back over to Michelle.
Thank you, Corey.
Michelle.
I love it. I love it. Representative Dolan, thank you so much that despite everything that we're learning and stuff, it's just amazing to know that you are all humans and you have human experiences.
We are nothing if not human.
Yes. And to just be able to share some of the stories that you all, and just in your experience, right? Just in your career, you know, the things that you encounter and how you have went and created change around some of the things that you've seen that was like disparities or, you know, not getting the resources that these children see, especially when we're talking about the school to prison pipeline, right? It's it's more of, we need more prevention versus intervention, right? So thank you for highlighting that. Representative,
one of the best ways we can do that is get parents in with their kids, right?
Yes, absolutely. And I'm excited about that too, because I'm grateful that you pointed that out, because I know, as you know as well, that there's a lot of missed opportunities with parents being able to attend events and after school, because some of them have criminal histories, right? That happened 20 or 30 years ago, and it's still like, no, we got to keep you at bay. You're a threat to our children, right? So it's amazing. It's great that this is being worked on so that we can remove some of the barriers to get more of the parents back into the schools and in the classroom. I remember with even my children, I was a PTA member. I did the bake sales. I did that. So I was a classroom mom, and I'm excited that I was able to witness some of the things that with education, and so a lot of the things we miss when we're not interacting with our children or their peers. So thank you for that and sharing that story. I'm with it. I'm so with it. And we thank you, Representative Goodman, for joining us. We do have a couple more of our elected officials that will be joining us here. So I will tell everybody, I think I want to wait of just a few more minutes. You're amazing, Representative Dolan. Thank you so much. You are family to civil survival, and we love you. So everybody knows, I'm just going to let everybody know ahead of time, here at Civil Survival, we are all family. When one of our family members is lost, Senator Dolan, Representative Dolan and Representative Goodman, you will probably see some folks lean in, because when one of us are feeling lost or we're trapped or we need some help, we will lean in. We don't call people out, we call them in. So you may see us zoom in a little bit. There you go. Michelle's got it. Michelle's got her zooming in. So we're calling folks in. We don't call folks out here at Civil Survival. So thank you so much. Also, as part of our family, is a lot of folks know this, that we do take, every time we gather with our family members, we do take a family photo. So with that being said, that it's usually be Kelly or Corey who will take our family photo. They will let you know prior to our photo being taken. Also, for those who do not wish to be on camera or to have your face in the family photo, please email that, put that in the chat to Corey, and Corey will make sure, or Kelly, and they'll make the necessary adjustments to make sure that you are not a part of the family photo. However, you are family. So whether you're in the photo or not, you're still family. If you get lost, we come looking for you. All right. All right. Carolyn, I see your hand up, my friend. Go ahead.
Yeah, this is not exactly on topic, but it's come up for me recently. So one of the issues I have, especially working with the tribes, is the fact that a lot of people cannot become foster parents because of old records. And right now in America, Indian people are the most sober people, especially in their 30s and 40s. And so we've got all these kids in foster care, overrepresented compared to the number of natives in the country. And we can't enlist families because they have records. So I know that you were talking about expunging records and stuff recently, but I don't know the current situation with that. If you know that, I'd appreciate any kind of help.
Okay, I'm just gonna jump in there real quick, Representative Dolan. So we were practicing telling our stories, right? So we're just gonna jump into it, and as our other elected officials trickle in, that would be great, because it seems like Carolyn was excited about what she learned in our breakout group. So Carolyn is excited to share her experience. So I will create space, gracious space, Representative Dolan, for you to respond to Carolyn.
Sure, yeah, I'd be happy to. Yes, I would agree that right now we desperately need good foster homes. And I would say that some of the best foster homes are with adults who have actually learned from their own life experiences and can pass that learning on to the next generation. That's you guys. My understanding, and Rep. Goodman might know more about this than I do. I actually thought that tribal governments had a little more say in, like, with their tribal members who could become foster parents and who couldn't. I thought they had, and if that's not right, I'd like to know that, and I can find that out. But that was my understanding, is they had a little more leeway to make those decisions separate from what the state of Washington might do with a decision like that. Rep. Goodman, do you know?
Yes, I actually happen to be intimately involved in the enactment of the Indian Child Welfare Act a few years ago. There's a federal Indian Child Welfare Act that was enacted in the late 70s in response to the Mormon Church literally snatching tribal kids out of their homes, decimating the tribes across the country. And so the Indian Child Welfare Act in this state is modeled after that, which makes the tribal affiliation the absolute priority for placement of children. So it's usually with kin, and even ahead of child safety, a perceived safety. So normally we have the first priority for kids to be placed in another home is their safety. The second is their well-being. But tribal affiliation is the absolute top priority. So we are very mindful of that.
So do you know then about this regulation that if you have a record, you can't be a foster parent?
That I don't know. I'm assuming it exists as sort of part of the, you know, the traditional legal framework there, but that might trump it actually, if there's a criminal offense. The other question I don't have the answer to is whether the state law and tribal law, how they interact with one another in this, but so I don't have a conclusive answer for you, but I would.
I mean, I do not know a Native man who hasn't been arrested.
Uh-huh.
You know, for good or bad reasons, whatever. So
Some
this
of
is,
them
this
been
is a huge
arrested.
issue.
Some of them have been arrested over salmon, and they were on the right side of history, by the way. Carolyn, I'd be happy to talk to you more about that and look into it, because if that's really the case where there's no human judgment involved, that's a problem.
You know, some offenses do disqualify people for certain positions, offenses that involve harm to other, physical harm to others, you know, crimes against persons, which are actually the minority of offenses committed. Most are property related or linked to behavioral health disorders and so forth. But I don't know this particular question, whether any offense would disqualify a tribal parent from becoming a foster parent.
But let's look into that.
Yeah.
So that we can get some answers for you and see if there's something there that could make the law more moral.
Okay, I'm putting my email in your chat, both of you.
Okay, perfect.
Thank you.
Thanks for bringing that up. Hi, Rep. Macri.
Hi. Welcome, Representative Macri. Thank you for joining us.
Hi, Corey. Hi, everyone. It's great to be here. So I'm a few minutes late.
Oh, no worries. We actually worked through our break. So Michelle ran to go take a break real quick. I see that we have Mark's hand up next, and I hope you don't mind, Representative Macri. We're just going to keep going right along.
Hey, Corey.
Yeah.
Really quick, could we just let the representatives maybe introduce themselves one by one and what district you're in? And just take 1 or 2 minutes to introduce yourself. We can go ahead, start with Rep. Macri, you're first on my screen. And then Mark, we'll put you up first, but I just wanted to give them an opportunity to introduce themselves. And I so appreciate you all being here. A few of you jumped in at the last minute, and I thank you so much.
Yes, that's perfect. Thank you, Kelly.
Yeah, great. Thanks, Kelly. Hi, everyone. I'm Nicole Macri, she, her pronouns, and I represent the 43rd Legislative District, which includes a number of neighborhoods in Seattle, including downtown, Capitol Hill, Fremont, University District, Wallingford, etc. And I've been in the legislature for the last 5.5 years. I serve as vice chair of the Appropriations Committee, which means I do a lot of work on the state operating budget. I also am a member of the Healthcare and Wellness Committee. I've been on that committee for the entire time I've been in the legislature. I do a lot of policy work in the area of homelessness, affordable housing, and more specifically on issues of housing justice. So I've done a lot of renters' rights policy over the years, eviction prevention, just cause policy, etc. Outside the legislature, I work in behavioral health and homelessness services. I'm the deputy director at the Downtown Emergency Service Center, which is a Seattle-based nonprofit that provides housing and shelter, a full array of street outreach, crisis response, and other behavioral health services to folks. So I've long worked on issues of intersection between sort of criminal justice reform and housing justice in particular. So it's great to be here again.
Thank you. And then Representative Goodman.
Good afternoon. It's afternoon now. I see it's 12:07. Very happy to be here with you. I am Roger Goodman. I am beginning my 16th year in the state legislature, which is just astounding. I look in the mirror and I say, oh, what the hell happened there? But I serve as the chair of the Public Safety Committee with jurisdiction over the criminal legal system. Also serve as a senior member on the Judiciary, the Civil Rights and Judiciary Committee, which is the civil side of the justice system. So both the criminal and the civil side. I'm one of the few lawyers in the legislature. And so surprisingly, and so that's kind of my niche is that branch of government overseeing the justice system. I don't really like to use the phrase criminal justice system because there's not a lot of justice in it. And so my passion is to try to bring justice back to the justice system. I've said that I am going to retire from my legislative service, but only after I bring justice back to the justice system. So I think I have a few more years of work ahead of me. My passion, well, my overriding passion is our planet. Our planet is not sustainable for humans at this point. The trajectory looks pretty bad. I arrived in the legislature wanting to be an environmental champion, but there are a lot there already. So I'm an enthusiastic yes vote for everything we do to preserve our planet. But there weren't very many legislators who either had interest in or knowledge of the justice system. So that's where I've sort of become somewhat of an expert. And the work in that area has been to take a look at each node in the chain of the justice system, from the street to arrest, to jail, to trial, to incarceration, to supervision, and then back to the street again, and see if we can intervene with a much more therapeutic approach. I just want our justice system to be less punitive and vengeful and more compassionate and restorative. And we have a long way to go. Sentencing reform is my major project right now. And that means responding to people who run afoul of the law with a community-based approach, not locking people in cages needlessly. And so with the hundreds of millions of dollars that we will save by not needlessly incarcerating people, we can take those funds and reinvest them in community-based supports and programs. And so I've established the Washington State Criminal Sentencing Task Force, which has been at work for 18 months already. We have another year to go to reform our sentencing system top to bottom. And it's very contentious, and not everybody's going to get everything they want. But I'm very encouraged by the movement there. And you already are aware of some of the bills that we've been considering related to sentencing reform. So we're already getting a little bit of a head start on that. The other area that I'm very interested in is young adults, those who are age 16 to, or emerging adults, age 16 to 25. Most of the criminal offenses are committed, both major and minor, by that age group for a number of different reasons. But we don't treat them like their age group deserves or is appropriate. We treat them like adults, and they're really not. We need to be wrapping around them, providing them opportunities, putting them at the center of their own future, rather than, again, needlessly objectifying them and punishing them and destroying their lives, and actually hardening their neuroanatomy for fight or flight for the rest of their lives. And so the young adult area is something that I really want to focus more on in terms of how we intervene on the street, how we treat them in the court system, and then how we help reintegrate them into their communities. So anyway, very happy to be here with you and looking forward to our time together.
Thank you, Representative Goodman. And next, Representative Dolan.
Thank you. So every time Roger talks, he draws me into his vision of what a more moral world would be. And he's an example, Rep. Macri's an example of the expertise that we have in our caucus in the House of Representatives. And frankly, that's one of the best parts of our jobs, I think, is the people we get to sit by when we're serving and what we get to learn from each other. You know, we're each kind of we tend to serve in our own wheelhouses that we know the best because we're citizen legislators. So we come to these jobs as elected officials with a lifetime of experiences in certain areas. And mine's been in K-12 education, primarily with kids in poverty, primarily with special education. And then I spent the last 20 years of my career supervising school principals. So that's kind of the management skill set that I bring to this job, which is really helpful. And I really do understand K-12. I'm vice chair of the K-12 Education Committee. So I do a lot of policy work in K-12, which includes right now, I'm working on a bill that came out of the school safety bill I sponsored a couple of years ago, trying to look at school discipline and making it more restorative. The truth is right now that kids are still, especially kids of color, are getting suspended, not expelled so much anymore, but still suspended for really low level kind of subjective behaviors. Things like being rude to the classroom teacher. So things that hopefully if our system was more ideal, we'd have teachers who could take a child like that and make them want to eat out of the palm of their hand, like set up a relationship with that kiddo where they'd see, the child would see that the teacher wants them to succeed. The teacher's actually not trying to get them out of his or her classroom. They want them to succeed. So part of that obviously is giving teachers better skill sets on how to deal with those low-level discipline things that, you know, when kids talk back to you, especially if you have something you're trying to do with 29 other kids, you can either get angry or you can turn it into a lighthearted thing and mediate your way through helping that kid learn better behavior. And that's the kind of teacher I'd like to copy and paste into every classroom around the state of Washington, is teachers who are able to kind of see the humor sometimes in little kids that are acting up instead of making them be a criminal in their classroom, right? So I'm working a lot on that kind of an issue. I also do a lot with K-12 funding, and I'm also on state government. So I do a lot with voting rights for people with former felony convictions. And the other committee I'm on is appropriations. So for me, this job, I just turned 69. And so it's a really fun way to take my lifetime of the skills I've developed and put them to use, because you get to be around all sorts of really interesting people. I like interesting people. I like people with different opinions, and I like learning new content. So getting to work with people I work with, getting to work with my constituents and doing those things makes this job kind of a perfect frosting on the cake of my life.
Yes, thank you for that, Representative Dolan. Can you say what district you're in for everyone?
Oh, I'm sorry. I'm in the 22nd, which is Olympia, Tumwater, and Lacey.
Okay, awesome. And you know,
I neglected to say what district I'm from. I'm sorry. I represent the affluent suburbs to the east of Seattle, including Redmond, home of Microsoft, Kirkland, home of Costco, Sammamish, the wealthiest town in the United States, and Woodinville with all of its horse farms and so forth. It's a highly educated and mostly high-tech workers, telecommunications and information technology and bioscience. But with their high education, they have a very strong social conscience. And although they don't need me very much because they're self-sufficient, they do sympathize with and support my passion to reform the justice system, to end the drug war, to abolish capital punishment, and all the things that I think we all agree on here today.
Wonderful. Thank you all. And before I pass it back over to Michelle, who I see is back, I just want to uplift something really quick. The power of these workshops. Representative Dolan touched on it before, but often elected officials don't have the full sight of the way that these barriers affect our communities. And so it's really important that we come out of hiding and that we set aside the shame that we feel and share our stories of how these barriers affect ourselves, our families, and our children. Because like Representative Dolan mentioned, you know, we shared that with her around how we couldn't volunteer in our children's school. And she responded with, you know what, I'm gonna drop a bill on that next year. And so really, this is a chance to be heard. And for many of us, it's the first time that people in positions of power have listened to us in authentic ways. And I just want to thank you all one more time before I I shut up and I let our powerful facilitator, Michelle, and others do the lifting.
Corey, your feedback and your insight is always appreciated and valued. So don't shut up ever, please. Just highlighting that. Again, Representative Macri, Representative Goodman, Representative Dolan. I just wanted to highlight for me what's important as someone who I identify as formerly justice involved, formerly incarcerated, and how we're able to connect with folks who have kind of somewhat navigated these barriers, right? Even for myself, someone who identifies as formerly incarcerated, formerly justice involved, and just being able to have that support and someone taking me under their wings, such as Representative Simmons, when civil survival was created, and saying, if this is really impacting you, we need to do more than just having a conversation amongst ourselves, right? We have to take this to other folks who can make those decisions, because sometimes we know you all do not have the capacity to come to our neighborhoods and figure out what's going on, right? So as being accountable as community members, it's our responsibilities to show up at your house, which is in Olympia, and schedule a meeting or, advocate or attending sessions for you all to get the information that that you need to hear on our behalf. So I thank you. And as an employee, as a reentry director within higher education, Representative Goodman, I want to acknowledge Recess Sammamish. I'm so proud of the work that they are doing around the reentry efforts in Sammamish and at Lake Washington Tech. Thank you. I don't know. Representative Macri, as an employee of the PDA, along with Corey and Kelly, and I'm also a supervisor at the co-lead program. So thank you. Thank you. You heard us, and you not only did you hear us, but you heard the voices of the communities and the business owners that are in our communities, right? And you addressed that. So I am on the committee. I work with co-lead, I work with the Just Care, I work with Healthier Here. So I work with all these, and I'm excited that even they were able to incorporate the prosecutorial liaison committee, that we able to intervene, right? We're able to have those conversations that prevent folks from being arrested based on substance use disorders or mental health. Who said that? Corey said I got 4 jobs. I really do, but I love it because I provide direct services. So I'm truly boots on the ground, but I know in reality that I am not alone. I'm not by myself. It's you all who help us propel this work and being able to get our voices heard, and then there being some amazing outcomes. So again, I just wanted to highlight the work that you're all doing and how it truly is working in creating the space. Right. Thank you for being here, because that's what just let us know that you all have created a space. And you're saying by showing up and being on this call with us today, you are saying that I do care about our communities. I do care about how you're impacted, whether it's in a negative and a positive way. I want to hear both sides of it. Right. So again, I salute you and I thank you. And it's a pleasure to be in partnership in this work with you. So again, I appreciate and thank you all.
Hey, Michelle.
Yes.
Representative Johnson just jumped on.
Oh, okay.
If we can get him to introduce himself for a minute.
Yes, Representative Johnson. So you guys, I'm just gonna, throw it out there. I am the reentry director, like I mentioned before, at Highline College, and I'm gonna kind of just throw a little shout out there for Representative Johnson. Representative Johnson is also on our board at Highline College. And so it's just absolutely amazing to have Representative Johnson with us and supporting the work that we do, but also being on the board, because at Highline College, I'm not funded by DOC like all the other reentry navigators are within higher education. And with the Washington State SBTC, State Board of Community and Technical Colleges, I created my own program at Highline College, and it's flourished ever since then. I've created the housing program within Highline College, and where they receive Section 8 vouchers. So I just want to highlight that, because if it was that without the members and our board members who support this work and being able to remove barriers for reentry folks, without the voices of Representative Johnson, then this work would be a lot more difficult for me to do. and me being having the opportunity to have support. So with Representative Johnson, congratulations. Thank you for being here. Congratulations on the birth of your son. But go ahead and introduce yourself. Let us know what district you're from and tell us a little bit about what bills you support in just a little. Oh, there he is. Yes. Look, y'all. I just said congratulations on the birth of your son, and here he is. So Representative Johnson, thank you for being here, taking time out of your day with your beautiful family. Go ahead and introduce yourself, sir.
As you can see, he's being fussy this morning, but I'm doing well. Thank you for having me. Sorry I was late, and it's just an honor to be with you. I know last year we got to speak, I think it was 2 years ago, actually, we all got to speak in person, so hopefully we get back to that point at some point, but it's just an honor to hear your voices and to represent you. And, you know, just, we have a lot of issues, obviously, that we're tackling this year. And, you know, we want to make sure that we hear your voice and we're in alignment with the community. So again, it's just an honor to be here and happy to answer questions as we go through today, but I'm here, I'm feeding him now. he's a big boy. He's almost 14 pounds at 2.5 months. So as you can imagine, he eats like every 2 hours.
Yes, strong one, strong. We definitely understand. We definitely appreciate you, and just knowing that being a parent is a full-time thing, so it doesn't something you just drop up, pick off. And so I think everybody who's paved the way, that we've been on enough Zoom calls where I've seen folks breastfeeding, I've seen folks burping, but it's just a simple fact that you're taking the time out of your day to be present. And so thank you for introducing us or giving us a little glimpse of the little one. So congratulations again to you and your family. We appreciate you, and thank you for your time, for everyone. With that being said, so before you all joined, as you all know, so who Civil Survival is, and you're a family member to us. So what I want to say real quick, we do take family photos here at Civil Survival. Everybody knows that now. Once folks come in and get connected with us, we are accountable to one another, right? And so if we haven't heard from any of our family members in quite a time, the folks that are on the screen right now, if you all want to give a glimpse to our elected officials, and that when we lose one of our family members out of touch and we haven't not connected for a period of time, what do we do when we need to go find one of our family members? So if you all know what we do when we lose somebody, there it is. There, go for it, y'all. Show the elected officials.
We're coming to get you.
We come to get you. So we just want to know, we lean in, and we're just, you know, this is our visual GPS, right? So we lean in because we know that we have a family member that is probably going through something. And so that's one thing that we always in Civil Survival, our one of our things is no family member is left behind. So we know that navigating reentry in life, especially during these times, that we need to check on one another because we're concerned about what happens to our family members, and we always capture our memories. So with that being said, at this time, we're gonna prepare for our family photo, and that includes our elected officials. However, if you choose to not participate in the family photo, we do just ask that you just turn your cameras off. Your names will appear. So at this time, before we get into our storytelling with our elected officials, we're going to have either Corey or Kelly set up, and everyone get ready for our family photo.
Okay, and just one more time, if you're willing to be in the photo, please turn your camera on. If you're not, go ahead and turn it off. And I'll take one, and then let me just transition the screen. And I got two. All right. Awesome. Thanks, everybody.
Grabbed it, Corey? Got it?
Yep, got it.
You're amazing. Thank you. Our family photo workshop. Yes. What is this? October. Our family photo for October 21. So, and typically I'll just say this, that if you want to view our family photo, it's always posted onto our Civil Survival page. So you can always look at that. Usually myself, Chris, and Corey, we always, you know, we're getting the word out in the work that we're doing. So our family photo can also be found on each of our individual pages if we're Facebook friends, as well as it being in our, it'll probably go on our newsletter as well, with that being said. So Thank you so much for the family photo. You guys look absolutely beautiful. You're amazing humans, and thank you. With that being said, we're going to move on to our next portion. So our family members, to all of our elected officials, have been practicing and telling our stories. We're very strategic about how we go about that, right? Because we know that your time is valuable, and we know that you have a lot of other folks that you need to hear from. So we typically will have our folks tell their story between usually about 2 minutes roughly, because a lot of us have had that experience in testifying, myself, Supreme Court, and just at the testifying period. So we have practice and working on that. So we have a few of our family members that will be sharing their stories with you. And so that's based on their introductions. And then based on their introductions, what the issue is. And part of that includes the storytelling piece, right? Whether they're impacted individually or whether they're impacted through family member and friends. So they are the voices of the unheard. So I just want to make sure that we acknowledge that. And then there's also going to be the ask and how you can partner with them to address the barrier that they're currently experiencing within their communities or within their families or individually. So with that being said, out of our group, let me rewind that. So our elected officials, Representative Dolan, Representative Goodman, Macri, and Representative Johnson. So once you hear their story and they've told their story, we would like for you to each individually provide feedback as to what you heard, and then the ask, and then just acknowledging what you heard and how we can partner in the future on their concerns and issues. Cool. All right, I see my family member, Mark, has got a hand raised up real quick. Mark, go ahead and ask your questions, family.
Hello, representatives. Thank you for being here today. I'm here because I'm a constituent from the 31st district, and I'm I wrote this down ahead of time to tell you about the problem of dementia sexual offenders. My father was incarcerated for a common symptom of dementia. And while he was given a reduced sentence, I'm concerned that the prosecutor was not given the proper tools by the legislature to do her job. The prosecutor was actually the first person in the courtroom to use the word dementia, but her words lacked any substance or any clarity in the law. The defense attorney was even more reluctant to use the word because he told me privately he was afraid to use that word because the judge's primary consideration would be that dad would have a problem being able to follow court instructions. And that was true. But for the judge, there was no other consideration allowed in the law. This meant, so those words, those tools of civilization were not used in the courtroom. And this has meant that my family, my church, even the city officials, the city manager could not use that word and to repair and understand the offense, which was a real offense. And there's no getting around it. It was inappropriate sexual behavior. To them, they see that the law looks only at the action, the actus reus in legal terms, and they don't look at the mental intent unless the law carves out an intent. For them, the fear and disgust was just widespread. So at the risk of creating yet another special carve out that discriminates against other people who have a past sexual offense and their valid concerns about, such as caring for their own children. There are many concerns that people with past sexual offenses have, and I'm sympathetic to that. But at the risk of that, there are two solutions that I would ask you to consider. One is to give prosecutors more authority to use what Representative Dolan used earlier was the word of human judgment, and that comes in RCW 9.94A-.411. Prosecutors can have decisions not to prosecute for certain guidelines, but they're afraid to use them. They're just afraid to use them because they're afraid of retribution from the public. But if the legislature could give them a clue or some words that they can use, for example, they could specifically mention dementia, but it already includes language that says that prosecution might result in a decreased respect for the rule of law and the authority of the courts. I think that language can be beefed up, I think. And the second solution that they could possibly do is, last year there was a carve-out legislation done as SB 5123 that would create a developmentally appropriate response to youth who commit sexual offenses. And it would not take much to add extra language to there to say, and also people with dementia.
Thank you so much, Mark. So we have our 4 elected officials. So can you individually respond to Mark's ask?
I think everybody's waiting for me here. This is certainly in the jurisdiction of my committee. This is complicated, Mark. Those guidelines in subsection 411 are voluntary or permissive. It's not actually mandatory that the prosecutors follow them. And it always is the prosecutor's discretion whether to bring charges or not on any case. But it's very difficult to carve out situations like this in statute. One possibility would be to add a mitigating factor when sentencing the individual because of limited mental capacity. And I believe that might already be a mitigating factor. I'm not sure. But what I think would be more effective.
It's not. It's in the sentencing task force as a proposal from on December of last year. It's proposed.
Okay, so we may end up getting something like that done. Again, we're redoing the entire sentencing system and taking a look at all these aggravating factors, mitigating factors when sentencing. And Mark, you did acknowledge that the crime, the offense was committed, and so there has to be some culpability, some responsibility there, but a mitigating factor to be applied when deciding what the sentence should be, what the response should be. I think rather than responding to the offense and the individual after the whole court process, I'm more interested in getting ahead of it so that prosecutors, judges, and defense attorneys are better educated in this. And a much more widespread phenomenon in the court system are defendants in criminal cases who have been exposed to fetal alcohol. Fetal alcohol spectrum disorder used to be called fetal alcohol, syndrome. It's now FASD. It's because it's very broad that very often there's no physical manifestation of fetal alcohol exposure, but many, I'd say up to 10, 15% of defendants in criminal court have been exposed to alcohol in the womb, and so they don't have the impulse control, and it's very difficult to follow instructions. So when they're supervised, for instance, they want to do the right thing, but then they don't, and they get violated and stay in the system too long. And so I'm engaged in an effort with the University of Washington that has arguably the nation's leading program in educating judges. It's through the law school and the medical school, educating judges, prosecutors, and defenders in attending to fetal alcohol and therefore to treat those defendants differently in the court system. So similarly, dementia could be another part of the training, so that they treat them differently in the criminal process. So that I'm really glad you brought this up, and I really thought about that those with dementia do commit offenses, and again, there has to be some accountability, but you also have to take account of the individual circumstances.
Thank you, Representative Goodman. Any other feedback from our elected officials?
So I'm just going to add that this is, when I was talking about we go to each other whose wheelhouse something belongs in. Rep Goodman just gave you the best answer that probably we're going to get. We could all add a little to it, but he's like the expert. And so whenever, at least whenever I get questions that are out of my own wheelhouse, I never think of myself as the smartest person in the room, but I know on any given topic, I know where to find the smartest person in the room. So what I do with my job is I go find that smartest representative and I pick their brain and learn about new content so I can go back to the constituent and give a better answer. So I'll just add that.
Thank you.
I'll underscore that. And I actually just learned quite a lot from both from Mark and just hearing about your family's experience and from Rep Goodman's understanding of the current law, but also just how the courts tend to act in these sorts of cases. So this is really helpful. And I like this idea of kind of mitigating factors. I worked on, I mentioned eviction reform policy, and we had a similar issue in the landlord-tenant law where judges had pretty limited discretion previously. And if you didn't pay your rent, you're essentially, the court had to evict you. And we built into the law some pretty defined parameters around judicial discretion. So not just saying judges will have the discretion to like look at all the facts and figure it out, but like when there are these sorts of factors like financial distress of the tenant, attempts to pay the rent that have been made, et cetera, in the statute now is listed a bunch of mitigating factors. And so there might be parallels here that we can include, that because I find sometimes, because we see great variance in how courts across different areas of the state act, right? There are some very conservative judges, hardline judges, and there are both prosecutors and judges who are kind of more justice oriented and take into consideration the challenges of the defendants. And so providing a little bit more guidance in statute sometimes can be helpful. But as Roger says, there is this balance, right? There is this desire to ensure there is some accountability when offenses do occur. But we need to also acknowledge there may be some contributing factors that are outside of the control of the individual.
And I can tell you a little bit about how this might work. We would have screening of the defendant before the criminal process begins. And if you screen for certain disabilities or individual characteristics, then that would inform how the criminal process would proceed in those cases.
I just thought of one other thing I'm going to add. So before 1972, we didn't have special ed federal laws for K-12 education. And this was the reason those laws became law, because you can't treat special ed kiddos the same way you treat other children who don't have the same disabilities. And so, if the judicial system could do, like Roger's saying, do a screening kind of thing, it would give you sort of the same ability to be more moral in your decisions on people's lives.
Awesome point. Thank you. Thank you. Wow. Whew. I told y'all our elected officials, they didn't come here to play with none of y'all. They came here to show up and show out. Rep Johnson, do you have anything to add?
I probably will leave it to my more legal folks like Rep Goodman, but I would just say, hearing the story is a tough situation because you obviously want to protect the person that had an incident that impacted them, but you also want to protect the person that's going through a mental health situation. So all I can say is that's something that we got to figure out. And I would hope that there are some spaces in the courts to figure this out and partner with us on this, and looking forward to those conversations.
I like to call this it's the difference between a crime and a tragedy. And no one is claiming that it's not a tragedy, but a crime by historical definition requires two elements: actus reus and mens rea. You have to have both a guilty mind and the guilty action, except lately that has changed and we're now moving the pendulum over toward actus reus, and we're not considering the mental intent of people so much these days. And that's a new phenomenon in the law.
Absolutely. Thank you, Mark, for being vulnerable and trusting us in this gracious, safe space to share your story. And what I've heard thus far, and family, what we've heard thus far, is that all of our elected officials agree that this is something that we need to address and work on. And so with that being said, all of our elected officials that have the capacity, and I know Rep. Goodman, this is your expertise. So is there something that Mark can partner with you and your colleagues on to be able to address his concerns?
Well, yeah, this is the matter of people in the community contacting us. I mean, you can contact me, but you need to contact the other members of the committee, and so that you can raise our awareness of this. And of course, whoever your individual legislators are as well, and ask them to bring it to the attention. So both the House and the Senate bring it to the attention of the committee of jurisdiction, or the chair of the committee. There's already precedent from the U.S. Supreme Court about the unconstitutionality of applying the death penalty to people with limited mental capacity. This is the same type of principle where we would have, again, a mitigation of that condition taken into consideration during the case.
Awesome, thank you. So Mark, Rep. Goodman gave you some good information. So do you know what your next steps are? You've already reached out to our elected officials who are here today. Do you know what your next steps are after Rep. Goodman?
Yeah, I took that as permission to speak to a representative other than the ones from my district.
Well, if you're from the 31st, I would highly encourage you to, we need support from the other side of the aisle. And so Rep. Robertson and Senator Fortunato, I'm chuckling a little bit. And gosh, I can't even remember who the other one is from the 31st.
Drew Stokesbury, Fortunato, and
it's Stokesbury. Yeah. Okay. So Robertson and Stokesbury are reasonable, and Robertson has a career in law enforcement, so might be sensitive to that.
He and I went to school together.
Oh, great.
But he hasn't returned any of my emails.
Well, we get 30,000 emails a year, and so it is really difficult. That's one thing I want to tell everyone here. Don't just send an email. It's going to be put on the big pile. You need to make a phone call, speak to the legislative assistant of the elected official, and make an appointment for either a Zoom call or telephone call or a personal meeting. That's the only way you're going to get on our radar. So don't just send an email. Believe me, there's a cascade of emails at this very moment coming into my inbox, and it's very hard to respond meaningfully to all those. You have to be a squeaky wheel. You have to stand right there in front of them, because then they'll pay attention.
Okay. Yeah, I'll say we get a lot of meeting requests generally, but at least when I get meeting requests from constituents, I sort of capture them in a separate list to prioritize. Legislators typically will prioritize meeting with constituents. So it's good to just be very clear, like I would like to request a meeting with you to talk about.
So every organized group, when there's a bill that they care about, they will send out to all the people that are on their email list, send this email to your legislator. And it's really easy to take a canned email and send it to your particular legislators. So the first thing, each one of us has one legislative assistant who works with us. So that's our capacity, is us, and we're kind of in meetings all day, and them who are looking at hundreds of emails. And the first thing we do in my office is we take those group emails. It's easy to sort them because they all have the same label on them. And we move those into their own little folder to just get them out of the way. And then we'll often like respond to all of them at once with the same, thank you for getting in touch with us about this bill. If you go to this site, you can track the bill and talk to the committee kind of thing. But then that helps us at least get down to the constituent emails that actually are written personally to us about a particular topic important to a constituent. And those are the ones we really want to see. And so, like Roger said, we get so many emails. We are drowning in emails, and anything you can do to get yourself to the front of the line in front of us is better.
So I shouldn't try to contact, I should stick with just my 3 representatives then and not try to contact a committee chair?
So I think, if you have an idea for a bill, it would be important to contact probably your representatives first, but then of course, go to the committee that does that wheelhouse. So like if you're worried about K-12 funding, come see me. Because you want somebody on that committee to write that bill probably.
And request a meeting, is that the next step? Meeting, okay. Okay.
Thank you,
Be bold.
Thank you. So you guys just being mindful. So we know that there's so much that we can do on our side, right? So I'm thanking our elected officials for this opportunity because they're the experts on. We hear that we get this many emails, and it's not like we're not responding to you, right? It's this, so they have actually given you the next steps of what you need to do. Okay, that's great that we're, the emails we get, but hey, schedule an appointment. Come see us, right? That's what it's about. So thank you, Mark. We appreciate that. And thank you to our elected officials for your feedback. Next, we're going to have Daryl, who is going to share his story. Daryl, the floor is yours.
All right, there we go. So thank you all for listening to us. And honestly, I had no intention of talking today until Representative Dolan started talking about education, and it just turned a light on. So big thank you to her for bringing that up. Basically, what I want to ask about is a bill that would provide a standardized audio format of all newly released educational material for the visually impaired. The reason is my sister's blind. When she wants to read a book or anything, she has to, you got to get a computer, you got to get a scanner, you need to get a program that will scan each page of the book, and it has to be compatible with another program that reads your screen. Then you have to go get another program to try and save all this stuff. And the American Disabilities Act it provides a big spider web of you figure it out yourself. So she has to find all these programs, figure out what ones kind of work together. And I can see, and I have trouble navigating all this stuff. And if you can imagine going to college and having one of these programs has a hiccup, you're done. Someone needs to come over to your house and try and troubleshoot all this stuff. So there goes being on time. And they're working on it. It's getting better, but like I said, any new book, she has to go through it page by page, scan it, transfer it. And if you're not going page 1, 2, 3, imagine trying to find page 536 in a book with your eyes shut. And you have to go through and scan each page and then listen to it to figure out what page you're even on. So I would just really like it if someone would look into that, because from experience, that is a huge hurdle that visually impaired people have to deal with.
So Daryl, I'll go ahead and answer that one. My master's degree is in special ed, and I supervise special ed people for a long time, like school psychologists, OTs, PTs, audiologists, those kinds of folks. And I actually taught blind and deaf children in my classroom back in 1973 when I started teaching. So I have quite a bit of experience with deaf and blind kids and hard of hearing and visually impaired kids. So part of the dilemma is we have no standardized textbooks in Washington State. And the legislature, we decide big things like how many credits a student needs to graduate from high school. We do that big stuff. when you get to the Office of the Superintendent of Instruction, they add what's called learning targets. So within math, in grade 1, kids need to learn these things. Within social studies, they need to learn these things in 10th grade. So that's the kind of work that the Office of the Superintendent of Public Instruction does. But the people who actually pick the curriculum kids use are school boards and the teachers who work for those school districts. So we have 295 school districts in Washington state, and the main decision makers for public education are the locally elected school board leaders. So let's talk a little bit about kids who are visually impaired and blind. As you're aware, there's all sorts of new technology that's available for those students. And some of those kids are really auditory, where they get their information from hearing it. Some of those students are more tactile, where they get their information from reading it in Braille. So it's really important to match how you deliver that content to that individual kid. Now, having said that, this is your daughter, right? You're talking about, I miss who you were talking about at the very beginning.
It's my sister.
Your sister. So in an ideal world, the way it's supposed to work is if she's really visually disabled, she should have somebody from both her K-12 school district and somebody at her college working with her individually to figure out the best way for her to get content delivered to her and helping her do that. And there should be money available to buy some of the computer needs she might have. There should be money available to provide somebody to turn it into Braille if that's her learning style. So it's a really individual thing. But the thing that she should be getting is a trained professional to help her through that.
Yeah, so
she's not coming to her brother and saying, help me figure this out.
When she went to OC in like early 2000s to be a teacher, basically me and my mom had to read everything to her. And it has come a long ways, but even now, it just doesn't make sense to me. The books are already in text format, like being produced on computers. I would just think it'd be pretty easy to have it already available in an audio format. You know, I don't think you should have to go home and screen books or, you know, scan books.
So she should be able to work with a person in her college or her school district, and they would provide that for her according to what she needs, because other kids wouldn't want that auditory book at all. They'd want a Braille book. It's really individualized how we all learn. I am totally non-auditory, so I would probably want Braille if I suddenly couldn't see. But the thing they should be providing is somebody to work with her. So her family's not left thinking, what in the hell do we do with this? We don't understand this.
Yeah, because I know a lot of like a new book, like if it's, hey, this book just came out this year, you're not getting it in Braille. Not a chance.
And why is that?
They're not out yet. Like if it's a newly released book,
the Braille happens in a school district with somebody doing the Braille. So you need the personnel to actually turn it into Braille. That's what you need, is that person who can do that. It's a great question that doesn't impact many people, because there aren't that many people that are that visually impaired. But hopefully, if the system's working well, we have, because of those laws that were put in place for special ed students, we have the families have every right to say, I need somebody to help with this.
Yeah.
It's your job, help us. My sister likes Braille. It's a brand new book. The district just approved it. We need it turned into Braille. That would be the ask.
Alrighty.
And just to add to that, Daryl, so someone who, myself working in higher education, I work with mainly in reentry, but I do have students who have disabilities, right? So, and I know on our campus, we do have the Access Services Department, and that Access Services Department works on when folks decide to get employment, they have a coach that they work with, that they take with them to their, on their job, right? To just do an assessment to make sure that everything's going okay. They also do support those who are, have visual disabilities or auditory. So like such as I have a couple of students who I provide pocket talkers to in the classroom. They have note takers. So I'm just adding that you may want to connect with this Access Services on your sister's campus as well. Representative Dolan is actually 100% correct.
Awesome. Thank you.
Back in 1973, when I had this little girl in my class who was totally blind, she was a hoot. She had the funniest sense of humor. But there was a full-time Braille person who I would give her what we were going to be doing in school 2 days from now, and she'd bring it back that morning all brailled for her. And that was in 1973.
Wow.
But I was in a big district. I was in Spokane, 30,000 kids. So more resources. If you live in Cusick, Washington, you're probably not going to get that service. You're going to have to go to your educational service district to get something like that.
Yeah. All right, Daryl. How comfortable are you? Good with the next steps?
Yeah.
All right, you're awesome and amazing. Thank you for sharing. And then next, we're going to call on our family member, Michelle.
Hello. Good afternoon, Representative Macri, Dolan, Goodman, and Johnson. Thank you for being here. I am requesting your sponsorship on the draft that FODE has been presenting to representatives and senators and legislation for the presentation on the floor in this year's legislative session. This is the family visitation rights. As the science has proven, strong positive family ties and community support reduces recidivism rates in all communities. Currently, Washington DOC uses visitation as a punitive measure instead of a positive proven way to reduce recidivism within our great state. 3 strong points in this draft are: this bill would state that visitation by family shall not be denied as a disciplinary sanction when unrelated to a violation of law during visitation. Visitation by immediate family may be denied temporarily for security reasons for no longer than 7 days. We've had family members that have had visitation suspended to them just for being a voice about what's going on in DOC. Persons committed to the custody of correctional facilities shall have the right to visitation by family. I am respectively asking you today, will you sponsor this bill for families and for the betterment of public safety, and also increasing in-person parenting involvement for incarcerated individuals as well as helping those incarcerated who are dealing with mental conditions that include PTSD, traumatic brain injuries, and social anxiety that can be magnified when positive in-person family support is withheld from juvenile and adults in DOC custody.
All right, I like the officials. We'll tackle that one.
I'll start off. There's certainly nothing more important than the family connection and the ability to visit with family when one is incarcerated as a protective factor and as the element that reduces the risk of reoffense. And so family visitation is absolutely critical. It's been tragic what's happened during the pandemic, just by necessity, limiting physical contact or any visits to any of the Department of Corrections facilities. This legislation is a good idea to have a visitation bill of rights, if you want to call it that. I don't know if you've done any of the groundwork. We are on the verge of the next legislative session.
Yep.
And so bills have already been drafted, vetted. All of the stakeholders have either agreed or not. It's a short session coming up. And so I don't know, this might not be something for the upcoming session because Department of Corrections needs to be involved in this. We need to get their feedback. We have a new secretary of the Department of Corrections who's quite amenable to helping change the culture of the Department of Corrections so that we look at those who incarcerated first, center our approach around them. So if this bill has not been vetted, it might, I suppose it could be introduced as an educational measure for the first, it takes, they say it takes 3 times to introduce a bill for it to be enacted into law, because the legislature needs to be educated about it and other interested parties as well. But if the Department of Corrections would object to this for whatever reason, that's part of the governor's executive branch. And so the governor, in fact, might either object to it or have hesitation, and that would probably stall it in the legislative process. So to the extent that you've already found a prime sponsor who's passionate about this, and to the extent that you've already gathered everybody around the table, including the Department of Corrections, to vet this idea, that would be very promising. But if you haven't done that yet, a little bit behind the curve at this point, because the next session is about to begin.
Yes, it has. We did work with, Fody worked with Columbia Legal, so it has been drafted. There's actually 2 bills that have been drafted, one for DOC accountability to strengthen that through the OCO, and then the family visitation rights. And I know that Fody has been reaching out to many representatives to set up Zoom appointments such as this one to discuss the drafts.
I mean, Columbia Legal Services is our, your advocate. Their institution's project. They really fight for those who are incarcerated. I'm talking about gathering around the table people who don't agree with this, because if you don't have people around the table with all the diverse viewpoints, then you never know what issues pop up with folks who have different experiences, different perspectives, different roles to play. And so that's what I'm talking about is
reaching out to everybody.
Having some of those difficult conversations with those who might not support this legislation and seeing what adjustments might need to be made.
Thank you.
All right. Anything else to add from any of our other officials?
I'll just add that we did some policy making last year in the child welfare space around family visitation. So I do think that lawmakers are becoming more educated about essentially the harm of family separation and the importance of visitation, in part because of the policy conversation in the child welfare system, but the concepts, obviously apply, as Rep. Goodman is saying, that it's essential for children, but also for parents to maintain these connections while the parent is incarcerated. So I think there's an openness to hearing more about these kinds of policy reforms, but I appreciate what Rep. Goodman is saying, just about the practical factors, because we do have a 60-day session. And so there's just a short amount of time for bill hearings, and most chair, I'm sure Rep. Goodman's already has a long list of bills he's hearing about from members, and may or may not be able to hear all of them. So it's good to start doing that outreach with members, and anything where there is discord between the stakeholders, like if DOC doesn't like the policy or whatever, or there's other opponents, then it makes it more difficult to get through. But you all have been to this dance before, so you got to start somewhere and start talking with policymakers and with supporters as well as opponents about the policy concept. I find the more we talk about these policies, the more likely they are to get passed into law eventually.
And thank you all for your guidance, as this is only the second session that I've actually been this dived into. So your guys' input on everything is so appreciated. So appreciated. Thank you so much.
Michelle, I do want to thank you for your zealous advocacy on behalf of those who are incarcerated. Keep copying me on the emails that you're sending. You are definitely, you're being listened to, and I think, no, you're making a difference. The other thing that I might suggest, if we're not able to get legislation through in this as an interim measure, is to work directly with the Department of Corrections right now on their visitation policy. And I will be very happy to help you with that, to schedule meetings with either the secretary or one of the assistant secretaries who sort of have oversight of this, to get an update and maybe have them just within the department improve their practices when it comes to visitation policy.
Yeah, I am excited. We've had a couple meetings with Cheryl on something different from this. So she is, she's receptive. I'm so hopeful that this is the change that will help everything. I mean, it's such a trickle down effect, what happens in DOC.
And Kelly just mentioned that Christopher Poulos is going over to the Department of Corrections. He, as you know, is an advocate for you and for us. And to have him on the inside will improve things dramatically. And the idea is to have the person-centered policy, right? Not this sort of bureaucratic institutional approach, but to look at the individual and to fashion, whatever they do around that individual and their needs.
Fingers crossed. Yeah.
Yes. Thank you, Michelle, our amazing family member. And just that's what it's about, right? Those partnerships. So keeping that line of communication open. And Rep. Goodman, thank you for saying, acknowledging that Michelle is doing her part as a community member and a concerned constituent about what's going on and affecting and impacting her, and acknowledging you're saying, that was just amazing just to hear you say, thank you. Keep sending me the emails. I'm seeing them. You are being heard. So we definitely appreciate that. We're going to move over to our family member, Seamus.
Hello. Well, thanks all for dialing in on a Saturday morning / afternoon. You make us proud. It's really great. Warms my heart. Okay. I'm relatively new to Seattle. I was here for about 10 years and then went away for a while, and now I'm back. Been here for about 2 years, and this is not going to be news to anybody, but holy cow, what a homelessness problem we've got. And I was in a similar situation when I was young. I was homeless, had a significant criminal record, and that was like the hole that I couldn't climb out of, was having that record. Luckily, I had a lot of family support, and a number of things redounding to my favor, including just social things that I benefit from, but I'm not responsible for, white male, etc. But because of that, I was able to expunge my record and then went on to law school, business school, and climbed the ladder in the tech world and things like that. So now I'm personally doing just fine, but a lot of people didn't have a lot of those benefits. So right now I'm trying to help out with conviction vacation efforts in Seattle, in the state of Washington, align a team of technologists around creating some software to facilitate the rather onerous process that a lot of times people with convictions on their record have to navigate. And it's one thing to assist in the navigation of an existing onerous process. And it's another one entirely to partner with people internally that might be able to shift the system itself as well, that we have to navigate. And I think both of those things have to happen at the same time. And so really, I have no concrete, immediate, reactive ask right now. It's more of just an offer of, we're working on it from this side, and we'd be a whole lot more effective if we coupled our efforts. So if there are efforts internally, and I understand that there are some bills that exist right now, I'd love to just, I and a team of 18 people behind me would love to be of assistance to align our efforts.
If I can comment, Seamus, thank you so much for that. You brought up a lot of relevant aspects about, particularly about the disparity of kind of circumstance that different folks find themselves in, and how, what that can mean in terms of what life sort of deals them because of the inherent injustices built into our system. I love what you're talking about. I would love to learn more. Government is not great at coming up with innovative, particularly technological solutions to deploy things quickly. So while we have made some, I think, positive moves to make it easier for people to vacate their records, of course, the Supreme Court helped to move us forward as well with the Blake decision and our kind of legislative response to that, and budget investments to help people navigate sentence vacations. We still have a long way to go. So I do want to give a shout out to the amazing work that's been happening on the Housing Justice Act. So in terms of fundamental shifts, right, it's important to help people vacate their records, but what would be great is if landlords didn't discriminate against people who had records in the first place. And so we are working on that. It is a very heavy lift. There's a lot of stigma that remains. I was part, not central, but certainly participated in the policymaking at the City of Seattle level when the Fair Chance Housing Ordinance was passed a few years ago. I think there's lots of lessons that are being applied to the current coalition work happening on the Housing Justice Act. And I think we're really fortunate to have Representative Simmons as the champion on that bill. And we're hoping to move that conversation along. There was a work session in the Housing and Human Services and Veterans Committee on the Housing Justice Act. And so doing more education with legislators about that we have the ability to change the narrative. I mean, you bring up an excellent point that there's so many people experiencing homelessness. I and a number of other lawmakers just got a briefing yesterday on polling, and what we see is that this is not a Seattle problem, that people across the state are very concerned about increasing rates of homelessness, and they are concerned about both the high cost of housing and the ability to access housing. And that is, you know, from Spokane to Vancouver, Bellingham, all corners of the state. So with that, I'm hoping we'll have a more friendly reception to a bill like the Housing Justice Bill. But as I said, I'm not deluding myself to think that it's going to be an easy path.
Thanks, Seamus. Your story is an inspiration, but I do understand that you benefit from, as I do, privilege just because of your gender and your skin color. So we need to understand that. You all have a guardian angel. You may know her. Her name is Tara Simmons, and she's working on legislation that and has already passed legislation in previous sessions. But I think a bill is going to be coming before my committee that expands or makes easier the ability to vacate criminal records. There are two aspects. This one is, Seamus, as you talked about, the technological challenge, and courts and technology just somehow have never mixed very well. We keep trying. I can give you an example of when a domestic violence survivor comes before the court who is actually a defendant because, let's say, she just couldn't take it any longer and finally hit the guy. She's what we call a victim defendant. She's actually the victim, but ends up getting punished. We're trying to bring before judges more information about who is before them so that they can make that distinction. And we've had a lot of difficulty just with the technology of providing information to judges. The problem, the other legal or constitutional question with vacating records is that each vacation of a record has to come before a judicial officer. It can't just be done with a broad sweep, like press a button and everybody's records get vacated. So it is a hugely time-consuming effort where every single charge or every single conviction for every single individual needs to be brought before a judicial officer each time. And so that's something we're struggling with right now. How do we can accelerate that process? And that's where technology might be able to help. But then again, we keep running into this issue of technology and the courts somehow being incompatible with one another. So it is something we're working on, and it is a priority of ours. We do want to vacate criminal records so that people can clear the impediments so that they can live successful lives. And so it's definitely something that we're working on.
I'd also like to just add really quick, I'm on the Housing Justice Coalition, and I lead the legislative subcommittee on that. So we don't have the actual bill language yet, but we are working on finalizing that bill language. And our next full coalition meeting is Monday, June 9th. We'll be doing some updating on that. And if you want more information, let me know. But as Rep. Goodman, or I'm not sure who said it, but it is going to be a heavy lift. And so we need everybody behind us on that. So, and then, yeah, I'll end there, but just wanted to let everybody know we are working hard on that.
And Carla, you said that was, what date is that?
June 9th. It's normally the first Tuesday of the month, but the first Tuesday is election night. So we bumped it forward to June 9th.
I think you mean November.
November, yeah, I don't know.
That's why I was trying to get clarification. I was like, wait a minute, you want us to wait like next year? I was like, wait, no. We need help now. We're not waiting
Yes.
next year.
November 9th, thank you.
Okay. And so is it possible that you can put that on our civil survival page or even send out calendar invites for that, Kels?
Yeah.
Awesome. Thank you so much.
The Housing Justice Act has been a priority for the Reentry Council for a couple of years now. And there is no more burdensome barrier to reentry than successful reentry into the community than proper housing. So I'm going to leave this to Representative Macri to solve that problem.
Teamwork. Tag team. Love it. All right. So let's see. We're getting close to that time. Let's see. Can we get our family member, Bridget?
Hi, everyone. Good afternoon. Bridget Molina here. And I wasn't prepared to talk, so I'm going to speak from my heart and we'll see where it leads me. I'm here in support of House Bill 1282 and 1413. I personally have been impacted by a family member who has been incarcerated, well, in and out of juvie from a very young age, 11, 12. He had a very toxic upbringing. Anyways, at the age of 22, he was sentenced to 54 years in prison. He didn't have a fair trial. It was just very unfortunate. He's currently served 18 years in prison. His childhood, he was just raised in a very toxic family environment. His mother passed away at a very young age. She was his only supporter. Father, brothers, uncles, they were all grew up around drugs, alcohol, gangs, violence. So that's what he grew up in. So that doesn't justify, the crime that he did, but it definitely explains the path in which he got there. And he didn't really have a chance, with his life experience. So at the age of 22, he's been incarcerated. He's become a better person. He's taken responsibility and accountability and taken numerous courses and classes to help with his growth and his healing. And he's continuously showed exceptional leadership skills, mentoring other young people that come in, and he's just been a positive role model in the prison system. Now with this new research with the brain science and also the emerging adults, these bills would immensely change everything for him and our family. And so I do plan on testifying on his behalf, but I know that I definitely need practice because I know it's probably 2 minute, 1 minute a speech. And I would just like to have feedback on what are the things that, could help, because I know there's a lot of backlash with the 1282 with whatchamacallit, the safety outside and stuff. And it's just a very complicated situation. but what are your thoughts? Thank you.
Once again, these are bills that are coming before my committee, already before my committee, actually. 1282, that would expand, increase earned early release time retroactively. So those already incarcerated for those who committed Class A offenses and including sex offenses. It's very controversial. We did get it out of my committee. It's now in the Appropriations Committee. And so I guess I could punt it over to them to get it out of the Appropriations Committee. Then, of course, it has to come to the Rules Committee and then be pulled from the Rules Committee to go to the House floor and then over to the Senate. So a lot of steps left on this bill. I think one big, needless to say, the optics of letting out of prison the most dangerous criminals is, you can imagine the rhetoric from the other side. The one obstacle, though, is those survivors of sexual assault. We work very closely with the Sexual Assault Resource Center and the other sexual assault programs in the state, and they're not supportive of the idea of earlier release of those who have been convicted of the most serious sex offenses. And so that's just one thing to keep in mind. So that bill has a tough road ahead of it. I want to be honest. We might, we're going to have a tough time. We'll keep pushing, but we might have to adjust it one way or another. But prospectively, in other words, from now forward, we could make earned early release time the same for everyone, basically 1/3 off, that you have to earn. And that's the most compelling argument for something like this, is if you have earned release time as an incentive to get into programming and to behave properly, then that improves prison conditions and then also improves the individual, prior to their release. So you have to have hope, and you have to give something for them to hope for. So increasing earned release time is, I think, a good policy. But again, politically, it's a really tough one. On juveniles, on the juvenile offenses, there's a lot more prospects there. That bill is already out of my committee and into the Rules Committee and ready for House floor action. This would be both prospective and retroactive. So in other words, those who are currently in prison would be resentenced because the juvenile points, the criminal history score, would be removed, and therefore they would have a less confinement time. That's a big big workload, because there's a lot of resentencings that would have. We're talking about tens of thousands of people, so the courts might respond to that. But certainly prospectively, it does not make any sense to count the criminal history of someone who was not fully developed as an adult, and they're not juvenile. They're not juveniles who were sentenced as adults. These are juvenile adjudications, which are relatively less serious offenses. And so politically, it would be easier to get that done. We almost got a bill like that through a couple of years ago, sponsored by Representative Melanie Morgan, to take away those juvenile points so that the score or the sentence length would be shorter. So a lot better prospects for that bill.
Thank you.
And yes, you only have 2 minutes. So it's hard, sometimes we give you 3, sometimes we give you 90 seconds, sometimes we give you 60 seconds, because, so many people want to testify. And it's on this platform now, the Zoom, because people from all over the state. So it has presented a challenge for us as committee chairs to fit everybody in. And so I always apologize in advance for not giving people enough time to testify.
Thank you.
Yes. Thank you for acknowledging that. So where are we at? The time is now 1:28. We are scheduled to end at 1:30. However, I'm a firm believer in collective decisions. No decisions are necessarily Michelle's. So as a family, we do have Julian who wanted to be able to speak to our elected officials. And so amongst our family members and our elected officials, are you willing to have the capacity to hear from our family member, Julian? Awesome.
I do.
Thank you so much. We appreciate the acknowledgement and compassion. So family member Julian, go ahead. We can knock this out within, we're going to practice actually with you, telling your story in 2 minutes or less.
All right.
All right.
All right. Thank you. Right now I'm on supervision and I've been complaining. This is another obstacle I got to get past. I've complained to the supervisors about my CCOs just hounding me, accosting me, and putting me through the ringer. I've no allegations. I'm clean and sober. I live in a Christian community. I just don't know where to complain and get some, get them to be held accountable, walk around with impunity, just punishing me for no reason. Right now, they're kind of stopped what they're doing to me because I went and got a lawyer, but they think that what they did is okay now. No, I want to know where do I get file a complaint because the LIMPA didn't listen and their supervisors laughed at me. And someone told me to get a hold of a representative because I was talking to this person. She's made a racial remark to me, like she said, I went in on the 4th of May. The next day, Cinco de Mayo, which is a Hispanic holiday. She said to me, "What are you gonna do tomorrow, Franco, for Cinco de Mayo? Get drunk like all the damn Mexicans?" And I thought, what did I just hear that? I didn't say that. I just put my head down. She's made me go in for a polygraph during a COVID quarantine. Told me to lie to the people so that I could get the polygraph. I'm on meds right now, and I actually ended up in the hospital twice because of anxiety because I've turned my life around. I really have. And I'm just behaving because my dad has Parkinson's and I want him to die. This is just an adoptive parent. I called mom and dad because they helped me. My question to you guys is, how can we hold CCOs accountable from, I see them violating guys in these houses for just the smallest and most frivolous little things, and that adds to recidivism. How are these people able to walk around with impunity, and where do I go to complain?
All right.
I guess this would be for Nicole Macri if you're the state representative, ma'am.
Okay. So a family member, Julian, I'm going to let, because you addressed Rep Macri, I just want you to know that I want you to know that you're a little bit choppy. So to all of our elected officials, can you hear me? So to the best of their ability, based on limited information that we were able to get on the other end, they're going to do their best to respond to you. And starting with you, Rep Macri, you can kind of probably relay a little bit of what you understood from our family member, Julian.
Yeah, thank you for that, Julian. And I didn't catch the fully the connection, but I wondered, and this is a question maybe for Rep Goodman or other experts, because a lot of you all are far more expert than me. If this is an issue that where the DOC ombuds could be helpful, this issue, Julian, you seem to have some insight into this, but this, I wasn't fully understanding the issue as it relates to your kind of your supervision versus to the impacts of what I think what you were saying about where you live.
I see Julian's trying to talk, but we can't hear you, Julian. I do know a little bit of Julian's story, so I'll just share a little bit. He's saying that he's being by his.
It's just I don't know where to find a complaint, because when I do.
Sorry, that's a little delayed. audio from Julian. He's being mistreated by his CCO. They're saying really inappropriate things to him. And maybe they're, I don't know, I don't want to try and guess their reasoning, or if they just don't realize that they're saying things that can be considered racist, or if they're trying to trigger him to be able to send him back because they don't like him. But, you know, who knows? And we always have these kind of thoughts going through our minds, you know, because it just takes one person in a position of power over us to really hinder our lives. And so I believe he's asking, who can he complain to or report this to? Who oversees DOC supervision?
Just really quick, I also wanted to highlight that what he was saying, he's like, you know, he's doing really well. He's living in a clean and sober home. He's in a Christian program. He's doing his part, but yet also he's seeing his housemates who are being violated on what it sounds like technicalities and then being sent back. So it sounds like if you can address that, that'd be great.
Yeah, I think the Corrections Ombuds Office should hear about this. I don't know if you've tried, but
they said they could help me because I was out of prison.
Okay, so it's only within the facilities then. Okay. So all I can comment is that it's difficult for legislators to bring up individual cases like this with the Department of Corrections, but I can say that the number one problem with the Department of Corrections is the culture of the staff, both inside and outside. You may be aware of the Amend project. Take a look at amend.org, A-M-E-N-D, Amend, out of Northern California. And the Department of Corrections is now working with Amend. I'm on that team. We were going to go to Norway before the pandemic broke out, because in Norway, they've completely changed the culture inside of the prisons. And basically, they treat people who are incarcerated like human beings. And it's that simple. And as a result, the reoffense rates have gone down significantly. So luckily, we do have a new secretary, although the old secretary, the former secretary, was also sensitive to this, but the new Secretary of Corrections, Cheryl Strange, is trained in this, in behavioral health and in you know, how to be person-centered. So I'm hoping that the culture will begin to change, but I've heard many stories like this, where particularly prisoners who are still in the facilities are being maltreated arbitrarily, and it's inhumane and bad for public safety. It doesn't help them, and it makes it difficult for them to reintegrate into the community successfully. But the culture of the staff is the number one problem, and I've brought that up over and over again, and I will continue to with the department.
Yeah, Julian, I'll add to that. It is difficult for us as lawmakers to intervene in every individual case, but sometimes we can, through what we call casework, work with the legislative liaison, like from DOC, to at least clarify the pathway to make the complaint. You said you tried with the ombuds and they said it's only for incarcerated folks and not for folks on supervision. But sort of, you know, bringing it up the chain, that we can probably help figure that out. So did you say you were in the 43rd legislative district? Do you know what legislative district you live in?
I live in South Seattle, ma'am. I don't know if that's your district.
South, you said South End?
Yes.
Probably 37th, either the 11th or 37th. So it's best to contact, you know, one of your representatives and say specifically, I've not had luck. Can you contact DOC on my behalf to, you know, help figure out whom I can raise these concerns of, you know, discrimination and just biased behavior that you think is a potential setup here.
So I just want to say really quick that because our elected officials are jumping off, that we do appreciate and value your time. And we know that we want to let you get back to the hard work that you are continuing to do on our behalf, on the community, on behalf of the communities that you work and live in. So we want to keep these conversations going, but we want to go ahead and let you reclaim your time. So we appreciate you for being here and thank you so much. And we look forward to continuing to work with you in partnership and in solidarity. So thank you to our elected officials. I see that the other two have jumped off. So Rep. Macri, Rep. Goodman, good stuff, good information. And we thank you, value, and appreciate you. And together we all win. So thank you. You can.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you for your leadership. And I just want to say that you have a lot of champions in the legislature for you. And Rep. Macri and I are only two of them. And but you know, we're actually not the leaders. You're the leaders. You're the ones who tell us what to do. And so we're making progress. But your organization, your willingness to be here today, your leadership makes all the difference. So thank you very much for everything you're doing.
Thank you. We appreciate you so much. Everyone else, we're going to let our elected officials go, but just stay on for a quick 2 minutes. And then Corey has something that he's going to share with you all, and we will reclaim our day. So Corey, on to you.
Looks like I was muted. So I just wanted to remind everybody that we have a lot of different parts of work that we do at Civil Survival. Our motto is educate, motivate, liberate. And the educate portion are these workshops. The motivate portion is our game changer groups. And our game changer groups, they're a place where impacted people can come and be in space together, where when we're having a hard time or experiencing a barrier, we don't have to explain why it's hard, right? Because we've all been there and we all understand. And we talk about bills, we talk about legislation that's coming, that's going to affect us and our families. We support each other, and it's just a space that's ours. So I put a link in the chat to sign up for a game changer group closest to you. Right now they're on Zoom, so you can actually sign up for multiple. And then I mentioned our educate, motivate. Well, our liberate is we've started a reentry legal aid project that you learned about earlier today. And we'll have the attorneys at my Kitsap group on the second Wednesday this month, where they'll be there just to answer legal questions. We're working every day to make it easier for folks to vacate their records, to get LFO relief and other forms of relief. And also part of our Liberate is advocacy days. We're getting ready to start planning our advocacy day for 2022. And that's where we, as a group, we get together and we either go to the Capitol if it's in person, or we go to the Capitol virtually, where we set up legislator appointments for everyone with their districts. And then you get that time for those 2 to 5 minute conversations with legislators for those elevator pitches. And we'll have more information about that in coming months. But really, you know, we have so many on-ramps to our work. We just hope to see you guys in the future at more events. We'll also be screening the film Since I've Been Down this coming month. And so we look forward to seeing you all there as well. Back to you, Michelle.
All right. Again, family, pre-existing family, new family, your family at the end of the day. So if you have any questions, please feel free to reach out to any one of us. And then even you'll have the information to connect into our RLAP program. Again, that's at info@civilsurvival.org. If you have any questions. Also, please remember that the elected officials that we invited here hold the same values that we do, and we're talking about reform and things like that. So again, I encourage you, this conversation just doesn't stay here. It's meant for you to take it to our elected officials to hear everything, for them to be able to reflect and partner with you to create the change that we want to see. So your voices are powerful. And you also remember that you also are the voice for the unheard. Okay, so we represent everybody. Some folks are in the midst of finding their voices and some have, but in the meantime, we are powerful in numbers. And so therefore we will hold the torch for all of our unheard voices. Michelle, you got a quick question there, family?
Yep, I just wanted to know if Julian got that. Scott Harris with DOC, he oversees all of the community custody supervision. He's the head of all the field officers.
Oh, it looks like we lost Julian.
Yeah.
Okay, I don't know if you can get that out to him, if you know how to contact him. So, and I don't have his phone number with me. I was gonna run over to the other house and then I'm like, oh, I'm on the hotspot here. That's right.
No worries.
That's why I ran. It's 5 acres. So it's like, okay, I got my exercise in today.
You're okay. We can get that information to Julian, but because I know who Julian is as someone who shows up, Julian is very good at taking notes. So when y'all all share information with Julian, trust and believe me, Julian is writing down that information.
Okay, good. Because I don't, I don't like to see that. And it's
absolutely,
it's gonna change. But I just keep saying, people don't understand 7.7 million external stakeholders, not just one person. So,
and that is so impactful too, is for us who all, we've had our navigating our systems and navigating the system in our own ways, that we can come back and we've done a lot of research on our own trying to navigate it, right? That we're able to get that information and bring it back and share with our family so they can make the next steps and they need to move, making their lives.
Yep, that's what it is, collaborating, networking.
Exactly.
And he raised a good point too, because technical violations are a huge factor in putting people back into prison.
Absolutely. I can totally agree with that, testify that, because as a reentry advisor, some of my students have been sent back on a technicality, and I've had raised concerns with my elected officials who was actually and on our board, which is one of them is Rep Johnson, and we have Joe Nguyen. So we have so it's important that they know that when you violate somebody on a technicality, that especially if they're receiving financial aid, all that contributes to them losing their financial aid, having to withdraw from the classes, getting it incomplete, and they don't understand the impact that it has on their financial aid if you're just removing folks, on a technicality. So that is something that we're working on. I'm excited that we actually have our chief, who is at the SCORE jail here in Des Moines, Washington, who is actually an instructor on our campus. So he kind of understands how this is working. So we have another voice to advocate for. And that's what it's about. It's about sharing our stories with individuals who can make certain decisions, or who are sometimes in those high places to make decisions for us. So with us rather, and hear our concerns. So it's imperative that we partner with those individuals. All right. So again, family,
many hands make light work.
You got it right. Absolutely. So again, family, I appreciate you all, your time. This is just the beginning. Stay connected, use your voice, motivate, educate, liberate, because our freedom is ours to reclaim, right? So with that being said, man, it's our family love. I can't wait to see you all next time, to where we gather and have another conversation and fellowship. Next time, everybody bring your lunch. We need to fellowship. We need to eat together. We need to break bread. Okay. I'm good. Yeah, we need to do that, because sometimes when I eat, it's a comfort thing for me. And so I am comforted knowing that I can eat my favorite comfort food, and then being surrounded by my family. That's the most comforting thing for me. So again,
be a sloppy. I'll need a Tommy Tippy bib.
Okay. Yes. We're gonna have the family potluck at the next one. All right, family. Any closing remarks from our team members, Kelly, Chris, Corey, before we sign off?
Just real quickly, again, I'm going to keep pitching the Monday night legislative caucus meetings. I put my email in there. We meet every Monday at 6:30, and we'll be doing a lot of stuff getting ready for session. And then as session comes, having action items for people to do.
Right. Again, thank you, family. That's all we have for you. Thank you for all the amazing comments in the chat. We appreciate you. We value you, and we're family. And just know if you stray too long, we will come looking for you.
Yeah.
Bye, everybody.
Bye, guys. Have a good day.
All right.